The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr.
are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, she has slammed Reform UK as Corbynism with a Union Jack, saying that they're left-wing on basically everything apart from immigration. Do you agree with her? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. We'll get our panel's thoughts on that. We'll be hearing from a Conservative MP in just a second as well. And that clip from Kemi Badenoch. She's given a big interview to our colleagues over at Times Radio. Lots to discuss with that. Foreigners claiming £1 billion a month in benefits, and Sir Keir Starmer urged to sack the Attorney General. This is Richard Hermer, Lord Hermer, who compared people who want to derogate, who want to pick and choose the European Convention of Human Rights. He said they're like Nazis. Really? Also, the Southport murderer Axel Raducabana, who threw scorching water over a prison guard in a horror attack. Well, he's been allowed to buy treats in prison, such as Maltesers and crisps. Why is he getting any treats whatsoever? He shouldn't have another cup of tea for the rest of his life, as far as I'm concerned. We'll talk more as well about a new era of threat amid the changing face of war. Lots more money. In fact, 3% of what the country spends is going to be spent on defence by 2034. That's what the government is saying today. We'll talk about the rise of fraud in the UK. Have you been someone who's been targeted by that? And Elon Musk and Donald Trump, that bizarre press conference yesterday. Also, Tenerife calling an emergency meeting after an inhumane crush at the airport. Are you going to Tenerife on your holidays? Are you worried about this? We'll talk to Simon Calder about that a little bit later on, the doyen of travel journalism in this country. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Full 3-hour show today. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. And remember, the main number does three things. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. Tech Update will listen to it and play it out. Less than a minute please, as I say. You can also give me a ring or send me a WhatsApp text message on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss this Saturday morning. Stay with me here on Talk. Well, Kemi Badenoch has spoken to Rod Liddle. You know Rod, of course, he speaks to Mike Graham quite a lot. He's on the station from time to time. Rod is also a presenter over on our sister station, Times Radio, and he's done a big interview with Kemi Badenoch. She has said some extraordinary things within that interview, and we're going to get your reaction to it, as well as Sir Christopher Chope MP. He's the Conservative for Christchurch and is going to join us in a second. But just before he does, let's hear what Kemi Badenoch has been telling Rod Liddle.
There's only one policy, really, that Reform has that could be talked about as right-wing, and that is on immigration, which we talk about every single week. We have policies on immigration, they don't. I think the last thing they said they were going to announce on immigration was a minister for deportations. We already have two ministers for deportations, the immigration minister and the Home Secretary. It's just not serious. This isn't centre-right politics. It's Corbynism with a Union Jack. It's nationalisation. It's lifting the cap off to child benefit. These are Jeremy Corbyn's policies with Nigel Farage fronting them. And this is the thing that a lot of the people who keep talking about unite the right don't understand. This is not a right-wing party in the sense that I understand it. It is a party that wants to tell people that they can have whatever they like, and if they can't have it, it's because of those bad guys over there.
That is Kemi Badenoch speaking to Rod Liddle on Times Radio. Sir Christopher Chope is with me, the Conservative MP for Christchurch. Sir Christopher, have you ever mixed up Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage? They're pretty distinctive political people, are they not?
Well, absolutely. I was elected first in 1983, the same year as Jeremy Corbyn. And I'm in a house with Nigel Farage, and they have got very, very little in common. I'm surprised that Kemi Badenoch has launched an attack in those terms. I'm just take one issue on which I would disagree with her, and I'm seeing her for lunch on Wednesday, and I shall tell her to her face. But the issues around net zero. Corbyn is a fanatic for net zero. Farage is quite the reverse, and I think that the true centre-right Conservative approach is to be highly sceptical of all these net zero targets and the burden that they are placing upon ordinary consumers, not just on energy bills, but in all sorts of other ways as well. So that's one fundamental difference between Corbyn and Farage, and I think we, the Conservatives, should be aligning with the Reform agenda on that, rather than trying to suggest that Farage is some kind of closet lefty.
Do you think Kemi Badenoch was wrong to say that he was a Corbynist, and not just factually wrong, but was it the wrong thing to do, Sir Christopher?
Well, I think I'm in my constituency, I'm trying to unite the right. And for example, yesterday I received an email from somebody who, following his resignation from the Conservative Party, I wrote to him and said, well, I'm seeing Kemi Badenoch on Wednesday. What should I tell her about why you've chosen to resign? And he highlighted the issues of the last Conservative government having become Labour light, having raised taxes, having not got control of immigration, having allowed crime to flourish. And he also referred to the issues around net zero. And I'm trying to persuade that person to come back and support the Conservatives and unite the right in Christchurch. And I'm not sure that what our leader has said most recently is going to help in that cause.
I'm sure that person will wait until after Wednesday to see what effect you've had on Kemi Badenoch. But if you're saying unite the right, she's saying that Nigel Farage isn't even on the right, isn't even a right-wing politician. He's a Corbynista with a Union Jack, or Corbynism with a Union Jack, and that's what he represents. Your task is a big one, not just in your constituency, but in your party as well, Christopher.
Well, I agree. Absolutely. And it's largely because successive governments have failed the British people, and the British people are recognising that. And so they are saying we need to have a complete fresh start. And whatever else Farage's party does, it offers what is a fresh start.
I mean, it sounds to me,
attacking them is not going to, I think, help us in the Conservatives at all.
It sounds to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Sir Christopher, but I'm just getting the impression that you're more convinced that Nigel Farage is a winner than Kemi Badenoch. Are you sure you're in the right party?
I'm sure I'm in the right party. I've always been in the Conservative Party, and I think that the Conservative Party, when it is true to its real beliefs, is a very formidable force. And I think we have lost support on the right because people felt that the last Conservative government, and perhaps one before as well, were not really true to conservatism. And another issue, Europe. And who could suggest that Farage and Corbyn are the same on Europe? Corbyn and Farage have completely different views on that, and we in the Conservative Party should be joining the campaign to try and ensure that we complete the Brexit, which hasn't yet been fully delivered.
In terms of getting people on the right back, is Kemi Badenoch the right person to do it, do you think?
Well, she's the only person to do it.
That's not a ringing endorsement, Sir Christopher.
Well, as you probably know, I didn't support her. I supported Robert Jenner in the leadership. But I've been around long enough to know that when you're in the difficulty we're in opposition, the answer is to try and persuade your leader to take the right lines rather than change your leader. Because if we change the leader, it's going to be terribly disruptive. I prefer to strengthen Kemi Badenoch and persuade her that occasionally she makes mistakes, as I think she has in this most recent interview, and get her on the right lines.
It's very, very interesting in regard to what people are saying. Gian has been in touch and says, "Morning, Peter. We might as well keep change the calendar to April the 1st. It seems every day is April Fool's Day. I've never known such a bunch of useless politicians, although your guest, Sir Christopher Chope, did great work on vaccine injury, and I would like to thank him for that." I wonder if we could turn to the issue that Keir Starmer has at the moment, Sir Christopher, and what you think about that. I just want to play a quick clip now of an interview I did yesterday with Catherine McKinnell. She's an education minister, and I tried to ask her whether she thought that what Richard Hermer, Lord Hermer, was saying was correct, and whether he was right to compare people who want to derogate, who want to pick and choose essentially the European Convention on Human Rights, whether they were should be compared to Nazis. This is what she said.
I think the previous government played fast and loose, if I'm honest, with our position in the world and upholding international law. And it's something that we stand by, hold to, but are keen to also look at in terms of how we can reform it and make sure that it is relevant and it works within the modern context. And I think it's an important and thoughtful discussion to be had. And I don't think there was any.
So what has all that got to do with the Nazis? That doesn't make any sense. And in terms of, I mean, should Richard Hermer just apologise?
That's how it's been. I think that's sort of the characterisation.
It's not been characterised. He said it. He said the words.
Well, I think the important thing is we recognise that actually there's a genuine debate and discussion to be had on this subject.
Is it a genuine debate and discussion by calling people Nazis? I mean, David Lammy's done it previously, hasn't he? He's the Foreign Secretary, and he called the President of the United States a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. You don't have a good record on this, do you?
I mean, as a government, I think we're very focused on reforming the country, calling people Nazis, taking it forward, and engaging in genuine debate where it's needed. And I think on this, we've had quite a poor debate for quite a number of years.
Has Richard Hermer made the debate better by calling people Nazis?
Quick fixes, not looking more fundamentally at our place in the world.
The Labour Minister, Catherine McKinnell, speaking to me yesterday on Times Radio, was doing a little bit of moonlighting there. Sir Christopher, should Richard Hermer resign?
I think he should. And the use of references to Nazism always get politicians into trouble, quite rightly so. And one of my parliamentary colleagues in the last parliament, he lost the whip because he made some reference to Nazism, and I just don't think it's appropriate. And there are lots of other things which I would hold against the current Attorney General, but this is the latest one, and I'm sure he won't resign or be sacked because he's a really good mate of the Prime Ministers. And that's another problem.
As you correctly say, Sir Christopher, he's no stranger to controversy, is he? He represented Gerry Adams previously. He has been heavily involved in the Shéagos deal, which many people, including yourself, are very annoyed with. I just wonder, I mean, friendship goes so far, but in politics, and if you're Prime Minister, you've got to be ruthless, don't you?
Well, maybe he will do a U-turn on this, but I don't. I suspect that this speech by Hermer would have been shared with Number 10 before it was made.
It will, of course. It will, of course, and he will have written some of it. It will have been signed off. Now, in fairness to Richard Hermer, Lord Hermer, he said the wording was clumsy and he regrets it, but he hasn't said sorry.
No, exactly. And of course, let's deal with the substance of it. The Labour government realises that it's being inhibited in a lot of it, what it wants to do by the ECHR. And whether it be on, we'll wait and see the results on the campaign to challenge the VAT on school fees, for example. But the popular opinion is that we need to bring back control over our own laws into this country, and we don't need to have an unaccountable international court telling us what to do, particularly reinterpreting the treaty which we signed when we joined the European Convention on Human Rights. And so my view is that we're not going to be able to take back control over our own laws unless we leave the convention. That's my view. It's the view of quite a lot of Conservatives and quite a lot of people who are on the right in politics.
Sir Christopher, just before you go, let me get your reaction to the front page of the Daily Telegraph today. Foreigners claim £1 billion a month in benefits. The welfare bill is about £6 billion a month, but £1 billion of it being given to households with at least one foreign national. It's doubled to £1 billion a month in the last 3 years. What do you make of this?
Well, people are absolutely seething, and this revelation is another problem that we in the Conservative Party have got, because a lot of this took place under our watch. And Conservative MPs didn't want this to happen. Well, how did it happen? Why were we so neglectful of the principle that we should be looking after our own people, and that people who come to this country as aliens or foreigners, that they should not be living off our taxpayers' benefits?
Sir Christopher, thanks for speaking to me this morning. Really appreciate it. Sir Christopher Chope there, who is the Conservative MP for Christchurch. Lots to discuss, lots of issues in all of that. Our main story today, excuse me, if you're just joining us, Kemi Badenoch has said that Reform UK is Corbynism with a Union Jack. I think there are many ways in which you can challenge that. We'll talk through it today. We'll evaluate her claims. Sir Christopher Chope has given us his thoughts on it. We'll go to the debate desk in a minute or two with Joe Wheeler and Paul Richards. You've been in touch. Stuart in Perthshire says, "Good morning, Peter. You almost made me choke on my Bloody Mary when you quoted Kemi about reform and Corbynism. They're getting so desperate, it's hilarious." Stuart, I love the image of you with your Bloody Mary, you know, a nice celery stick in there as well. It's a nice way to start a Saturday morning. And actually, a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about drinking wine. And apparently, I mean, I don't drink, as you may know, but drinking 1 glass of wine a year is the maximum, apparently. That's the new advice, or it's a study that's been out. We'll talk about that in a minute or two. Another person says the thing the likes of Lord Hermer doesn't realise is that thanks to those human rights laws, our judiciary has become the very dictatorship they claim to fear. Brad in Cambridge says, "I almost feel sorry for Kemi Badenoch. I believe she genuinely does try hard to do the right thing, but she falls flat on her face every time. I've heard nothing in the last year for the Tories to win me back." Betty says Badenoch is desperate. Last 3 Prime Minister's questions, she's stuck to lines, prepared midweek instead of tacking on the issue of the day. Betty, you're absolutely right. Wasn't it really weird when Keir Starmer announces that he's doing a U-turn on the winter fuel allowance, and her 4th question she asked him the same thing: will you do a U-turn on the winter fuel allowance? He's just announced it. That means you got to change your questions, mate. She's lazy, says Betty, and never wanted to be a leader without the trappings and VIP treatment. Jenrick is a clown. The old guard Tories would slaughter this mature Labour front bench. Last interview over Hermer, a classic example. Reform can't win 43% with Farage, says Betty. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that on Robert Jenrick. He's joining me on my show tomorrow around this time. The show is on between 10 and 1. He is going to be on that show. We're also going to speak to Sarah Pochin as well, the Reform UK MP. Barry's been in touch and says, morning Peter, every time the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch open their mouths, more people will vote Reform. They just don't get it. Totally out of touch and panicking 4 years from the next general election. Ian in Hemel Hempstead says it seemed Farage was living rent-free in Starmer's head on Thursday. It seems he may have had an apartment in Kemi's head so that she can use it too. And Richard in Scotland says people have to understand that the Conservative Party isn't a Conservative Party. It's a Liberal Party. The Conservatives are Liberals. Nigel Farage is a Corbynista. I can't keep up anymore. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. We'll go to the debate desk in just a second. We'll take some of your calls as well. Also, Richard Hermer, the Attorney General, who thinks you're a Nazi if you want to derogate and withdraw, or at least already take some of the European Convention on Human Rights, take it forward, some of it, not adhere to it. Well, he thinks you're a Nazi if you think that. What do you think of him? 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Ethnic minority communities are prosecuted or face inspections or stop and searches a lot more than white people. I mean, to me, it just seems once again that Sadiq Khan is saying, oh, well, because certain people break the law, let's just get rid of the law.
Well, the thing with Sadiq Khan, he has never approved of stop and search. He's never liked it. And the truth is, stop and search is a very, very important tool for the police to be able to stop people and see what they're carrying, whether it's knives or cannabis.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I think I can honestly say there's some disbelief in regard to what Kemi Badenoch has said. We're going to play that clip again in a minute. I promise you she has done this. This is an interview with Rod Little on Times Radio, our sister station. And Rod Little, who you know, of course, he appears in this station many, many times, and often once or twice a week as well with Mike Graham. He has spoken to Kemi Badenoch, and she has said that Reform UK is Corbynism with a Union Jack. Angela's been in touch and says, good morning, Peter. Did I just hear that Kemi said that Reform UK are like Jeremy Corbyn with a flag? How weird and crazy is that? Is it an insult, or does she not understand Corbyn's ideology? We'll get into all of that in a second with our debate desk members. Kemi Badenoch is not the person who should be leading the Conservatives, says Steve. She is not a serious politician. Who advised her to attack Farage after the debacle of Starmer's attack on Thursday? It's time she either listened or walked away. Kanzi says, I'm sick of this left versus right argument. Not everyone on the right is right. Not everyone on the left is wrong. I want a Prime Minister who sees common sense and does what is right. Nadine says, I fear for Kemi Badenoch. I believe she has just made the biggest mistake of her career as leader of the Conservatives. To compare Nigel Farage to Jeremy Corbyn and to say that Reform UK is a left-wing party sounds so desperate and ridiculous that all it will do will push even more Tories to switch to Reform. Well, I promise you she said it. I'm going to prove it to you right now. This is what Kemi Badenoch has said in this interview.
There's only one policy really that Reform has that could be talked about as right-wing, and that is on immigration, which we talk about every single week. We have policies on immigration, they don't. I think the last thing they said they were going to announce on immigration was a minister for deportations. We already have 2 ministers for deportations, the immigration minister and the home secretary. It's just not serious. This isn't centre-right politics. It's Corbynism with a Union Jack. It's nationalisation. It's lifting the cap off to child benefit. These are Jeremy Corbyn's policies with Nigel Farage fronting them. And this is the thing that a lot of the people who keep talking about unite the right don't understand. This is not a right-wing party in the sense that I understand it. It is a party that wants to tell people that they can have whatever they like, and if they can't have it, it's because of those bad guys over there.
So not only has she said in that interview that Corbynism with a Union Jack is what Reform UK is doing, she's also said that they have no policy on immigration. Really? I mean, you can criticise Reform UK for many things. I'm fairly sure they have a policy on immigration, given that that's kind of their thing. Anyway, let's discuss this now with our debate desk regulars, Joe Wheeler, political commentator and meteorologist. Hello there.
Hello.
Lovely to see you. And Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor. Paul, have you ever mixed up Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, the only thing I would say they have in common is that Corbyn was anti-EU and pro-Brexit. I mean, he voted no in the referendum in '75 and he voted against all of the different changes to the EU and then sabotaged Labour's campaign to stay in. So that's one bit of the Venn diagram where you can put them both. But this weird soundbite that Kemi Badenoch has come up with today doesn't really work because most people don't have that sophisticated analysis of Corbyn's politics over the last 40 years. And also, most people have forgotten who he is. You know, he's yesterday's man. So to drag...
I don't think people have forgotten who Jeremy Corbyn is, have they?
Well, I think he's not in the public eye in the same way
not
as he
to
was
the same degree,
years,
but people know what he stands for. I mean, he has been very consistent. I can criticise him for many reasons, and I often do.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's believed the same thing since 1983. I think people know what he thinks.
Yeah, well, 1975, I would say. But certainly, that's fair. But, he's an independent now. He's not leading the Labour Party. He's not, trying to be Prime Minister. He's not in the public eye in the same way. So it's a strange analogy to draw. And I think the bigger picture is that just Kemi, her days are numbered now. I think she's now annoying enough of her own party with this kind of quite badly handled response to Reform and to Labour as well.
Do you agree with Nadine, our tweeter, who said that this is the biggest mistake Kemi Badenoch has made?
I don't think it's the biggest mistake, but I think it's part of a pattern where she has not quite got the right touch. Certainly at PMQs week after week she misses the open goals. When she's trying to sort of appeal to the centre-right, she just misfires, and there's something sort of discordant about this. It doesn't quite work, does it? And what are her advisors doing? You and I used to be special advisors. I wouldn't have let that out the door. I wouldn't let my minister say that out loud. This is the sort of thing that their job is to stop idiot statements being made.
Well, it sounds to me as that has been worked up. That has been that.
Yeah, somebody thinks this is clever.
If she's just come up with that off the top of her head, fair enough. But I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't planned.
Right,
and if it was planned, that kind of makes it worse.
Somebody has worked this up to make a headline, to make a point, because they think it will appeal. And as your callers today have revealed, it's not.
Joe, what's your perspective on this? What do you think Kemi Badenoch's up to here?
Well, first and foremost, I had to grope my way past the fact that she said the Conservative Party is certainly to the right of reform. And I'm thinking, are you sure?
There's quite a few things in this as well. Reform UK has no policy on immigration was the one that sort of slightly leapt out to me as well.
Well, yeah, it sounds to me like somebody is extremely rattled, to be perfectly honest, because I heard Nigel Farage speak earlier in the week. He seemed to be quite clear on immigration policy, and he also seemed to be quite clear on how it was going to be funded as well. He was caught out by a reporter and he kind of said, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to tell you, and then launched forthwith. This idea of Corbynism with the Union Jack. Now, of course, Jeremy Corbyn did have some very popular thoughts. One of them, I think, was getting rid of the student loans or
That's right, forgiving student loans,
that.
Yeah.
And at that point, my son said, oh, do you know something, I might vote for him. And I said, just be very careful. If you are unelectable, you can promise unicorns.
Also, you'll never be welcome in this house again.
I didn't say that. I wouldn't say that, Paul. I wouldn't. I would give freedom of decision, freedom of speech.
What's going on? Sorry, with some problem with a microphone. Is that Joe's, perhaps? Joe, I think your microphone's maybe fallen down there or something. There's some issue there. Apologies to listeners. You just heard a lot of scratching there. Apologies for that. Paul, I don't think you would describe yourself as a Corbynista, perhaps, but he was very, very popular, and maybe that's the link that Kemi Badenoch has in her head.
Well, popular with who? I mean,
he nearly won the 2017 election. I know, it was there.
Not that nearly. I mean, there was several. Was it 1 million votes behind, and 80-odd seats?
Felt close enough on the night, I can tell you.
Well, I'm sure. And they obviously the Corbynistas claimed it as a victory, even though they hadn't actually won. I mean, I first met him.
They won the argument.
I first met him in 1988 when he was trying to get rid of Neil Kinnock as leader of the Labour Party, and he came and spoke. And I remember thinking at the time, you're just saying anything that they want to hear. There's no sort of substance to this. It's just all slogans. And I haven't really changed my view since 1988. That was his whole shtick, was just basically saying things that sounded vaguely popular. But by the time of the general election, in the one that he was so badly defeated in, he was offering free Wi-Fi, free dentistry, we're wiping out your student loan, a 4-day week, free money for everybody,
free kitten,
for everything.
Massages.
That's right, yeah, and steak knives, and it was just ridiculous. They were laughing at us on the doorsteps with this litany of unfunded promises, and so by that point, popular just became absurd.
How do you think? I mean, it's been really interesting this week, hasn't it, Joe? When we've seen Keir Starmer attacking Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage attacking Keir Starmer. Now Kemi Badenoch has kind of waded in. She's in this weird position where she thinks that, well, maybe it's not weird, maybe it's perfectly reasonable, that the two-child benefit cap should remain. For the first time, literally in 4.5 years of presenting these programmes, we're getting viewers and listeners to this station attacking Nigel Farage seriously, properly, on the two-child benefit cap. It's been a strange week in politics. Who do you think the winner is? Who's come out of this best, do you think?
At the moment, I think Farage has, for the very simple reason they've edged ahead in the polls for a start, which is quite unusual. It has been a two-horse race for so long, and I think that is why Starmer is rattled. I think that's why Badenoch is rattled. They never actually saw reform as a real threat to them, as a political entity, and it is there, and it is real, and people are getting keener and keener on their policies, populist or not, funded or not. They like what Nigel Farage is saying, and whatever Starmer is saying, about the amount of immigration, and I know another of the stories this morning is the amount spent on that. The fact that we've still got the boats coming over, the fact that people are still really unhappy, they're facing a cost of living crisis, they're seeing other people ahead of them in the queue for housing, for dentistry, for health, all these things. For as long as those things are not addressed, and they weren't by the Tories either, then Nigel and reform are going to become more and more popular.
Paul and I are slightly, not completely, creatures of the Westminster village. We've both been special advisors. I like to think that I have some sort of view what people outside London, 82% of our viewers and listeners outside London, we're trying not to be a London-centric, Westminster-centric kind of station. That's not who we are, that's not what we are. Joe, do you think people care whether Nigel Farage is described as left-wing or right-wing?
No, absolutely not. I think one of the other problems with the political parties at the moment as well, OK, Nigel Farage is a bit of a Marmite figure. You either like him or you really don't. Very few people are in the middle kind of going, I don't really care. Kemi Badenoch, I would really struggle to pick out in a lineup. And Keir Starmer, I think, has become, forgive me, universally hated.
Not universally hated. I think that's a little bit strong, but
quite a few people who don't like him.
That's right.
Yeah. How do you think he's done this week, Paul?
Well,
has he made progress?
I think he's right to identify reform as being a serious threat. But your point about people just gave Farage a free pass, but just pushing back on Joe slightly, if you forgive me, that I think Farage has jumped the shark this week, because I think first of all he's taken his base for granted with his two-child cap announcement, which is designed to appeal to sort of liberal lefties like me, who are very unlikely to vote for Farage. But he's upset the very people that his base depends on. And this week on Talk and other stations, the sort of ferment of anger around that has been seen by people who would describe themselves as his supporters, so he's damaging his own base. And then he's gone further with this uncosted manifesto of promises, which puts him, actually Kemi's right in this regard, does put him into the Corbyn area of just promising whatever you like to anybody without any sense of how we're going to pay for it. And he's going to come under greater scrutiny now as a result of that. And I think that's when the wheels start to come off a bit. So I think maybe it is an interesting week in politics, as you described, but I think the impact of it will be more felt by Reform UK than anyone else.
Very interesting thought. Joe?
I was just going to say, I agree with you about the two-child cap. That is slightly bizarre. When the others are looking to keep it and he wants to take it off, that is going against your own supporters, really.
Well, you have Starmer and Farage believing the same thing on the two-child benefit cap. It's a very strange way, isn't it?
Well, yes, but if you've got a third party, surely at some point you're going to have various policies overlapping. It has to happen.
That's true.
And you can't just sit down and go, we are to the left, we are to the right, and wherever Farage wants to put himself, either further to the right or centre-right or wherever it may be, and say, so because we are here, these are our policies.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have different policies for different things, and those might lapse into the lapse into the right.
But who cares?
I was going to say, but lifting that cap, you're right, that's quite a strange move for reform.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that in a second. We've got a break now, but we'll be back with Joe and with Paul in just a second here on Talk. We'll get your views as well. Tell us what you think. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, you heard Jeremy Kyle's voice there in the break. He is back on Monday with Drive, and it's been wonderful to be sitting in for him for the last couple of weeks, and it's been great. He's had a really good break, and we'll be back firing on all cylinders on Monday afternoon, I should say, between 4 and 7. That's generally when drive time programmes are, I've heard anyway. Martin in Lichfield says, Badenoch, what a ridiculous statement. Corbyn's Marxist ideology is nothing like Nigel Farage's plan for this great country. She's not a leader, she's a liability. And the Tories' demise, which will continue at pace. I had voted Tory all my life until last year, but never again, says Martin. I'm 66 and it will be reform all the way. The Conservatives have learned nothing and don't want to listen. It's the Westminster disease. My feeling is both these uni parties will be toast forever. We need someone that loves the United Kingdom and not someone who despises it, says Martin from Lichfield. Keep hearing that phrase with uni party. It's really interesting, this idea. The Conservatives, Labour and the Lib Dems are all the same. Morning, Peter says, Stephen in London, you as a former special advisor, could you tell us who on earth is advising these people? First, Starmer in his disastrous press conference about reform, comparing and the union flag to Corbyn as a political movement for reform. They're both absolutely poleaxed by Farage and Reform. I haven't heard that in quite a while. Poleaxed. It's a good word. Stephen, it's interesting actually that Keir Starmer was meant to be away at some event in Europe. I can't remember exactly what it is, but on mainland Europe, but he actually cancelled it to do the event at the glass factory in St Helens. He may be transparent, but are his hopes shattered? Let's speak to Joe Wheeler and Paul Richards, who are still here on the debate desk. Where do you think this goes, Joe? Because we're at a really interesting situation where Reform UK are in all but name the official opposition in this country. You got Kemi Badenoch, who's trying to make an impression. She's made these comments today comparing Nigel Farage and Reform UK as Corbynism with a Union Jack. Can she in any way cut through, or are her days numbered, do you think?
It's my opinion that her days are numbered. I think there's a bit of an issue with both Conservatives and Labour at the moment, that if they lost Starmer, if they lost Badenoch, who were they going to have? And that comes back to this thing about Farage being a very Marmite figure. But it also is redolent of the whole Brexit issue, in so much as the Conservatives back then thought it wouldn't happen. Have a referendum, they're never going to go for it. And then they did. And it's a bit like Reform have popped up now, and the other two parties have said, you know, there's lots more before Reform are going to cause us a problem. And suddenly they are a problem. They're ahead in the polls. And as I say, I think Kemi is just shaken up, really.
Yeah. And this really speaks, what you're saying there, Joe, really speaks to the fact that there's so many people, conventional wisdom, and we say, oh, it's so shocking and these things are happening and so on. I was not shocked at all when Reform UK did so well in the council elections. I spoke to journalists, very senior journalists in lots of different outlets, broadcasters, papers, and going, oh gosh, this is really strange. Oh, I'm surprised at this. Not for a second did it surprise me. Maybe the scale of it, maybe, you know, nearly 700 councillors were a bit more than perhaps what we expected. But you know, it's really interesting how so many things have happened, really since 2014, I would argue, that so much of the Westminster Village conventional wisdom just haven't expected. The rise of Reform is one of those, isn't it, Paul?
Well, anyone that's knocked on any doors, and I've been doing this for 40 years now, you know, knocking on random doors of people that don't want to answer it. Got Nigella Lawson
Have you
once
got the
on
message?
Yeah. Well, Nigella came to the door once, and that was quite interesting.
Did she?
Yeah, that was quite good. Right. She didn't tell me how she was voting, but anyone that's done that,
I can guess.
Yeah, would say that people now are telling us that they don't have any tribal loyalty to any party at all now. So you can't tell from the outside of somebody's house how they're going to vote in the way you could 30 years ago. You know, what car they had and what their drive was like. Now it's all up in the air. So people are choosing election by election. They're choosing on issues, personalities. They don't have ideology. They don't have loyalty. They don't have a sort of, you know, my dad voted this way, so we're all Labour here or whatever.
Thing, Paul? Is it good that people are
shopping around, aren't they?
Well, they are, but aren't they making a decision based on maybe lots of evidence, maybe not very much evidence? But well, I mean, I really don't like it when people say, oh well, we're, you know, a Labour family or a Conservative family or whatever. You can have whatever views you want.
Well, of course, but I think people are making their minds up not on the evidence. That's the problem. I mean, we used to put a great store in the manifesto. Nobody's reading the manifesto. We used to have public meetings where people could quiz the candidates. We don't do hustings anymore in quite the same way. I mean, I did some hustings in the election. Everyone out in the room was either a candidate or with a candidate.
That's really old school. I mean, look at Nigel Farage's TikTok following, for example.
Sure,
he's connecting with a lot of young voters.
Well, that's fair, yeah. And there are these, you know, podcasters who are attracting live audiences as well, interestingly. So there's a phenomenon there where people are hungry for politics, but I just think they're not tribally loyal like they used to. Just to pick up Joe's point about who instead of Kemi, though, I mean, Robert Jenrick on manoeuvres on steroids, so he's sort of doing his rubbish Batman outfit, you know, his
I think this week,
but, you know,
I honestly think
incredible.
What Robert Jenrick did in that video, and if you haven't seen this video, can we get this video up actually?
It is rather remarkable, isn't it?
Robert Jenrick. We might actually just have a look at it.
Vigilanteism.
Well, it's I mean, do you know what TFL have said to him as well? They've said, oh, you're not allowed to video people on our premises.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
I mean, just insane. The list of things you can and can't do. It's no wonder we're having a bit of a pushback.
Well, and I mean, one would have thought a thing you should do is pay your fare. Certainly Robert Jenrick, I would argue anyway, and I wonder what you think, Joe, I would argue that actually, you were saying a minute ago, Kemi Badenoch, you can pick her out of a police lineup. The point is, with Robert Jenrick, you can, and he is a bit different as a politician. He was known as Robert Generic. That was his nickname, because he was just sort of, you know, sort of youngish white Tory guy faded into the background. He is making some sort of impression here, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is, but not visibly and not in position. If he did become leader of the Conservative Party, it would take some time for the public to get behind him. I mean, they may be aware of some of the stuff he said, they may approve of some of that, but in essence, it would take time.
Let's just see a little bit of this video and hear it as well.
You can say
this is Robert Jenrick. He's in a station in London, and
you're carrying a knife.
He is
nearly 1 in 25 people using London's public transport aren't paying for it. So there's 8 officers down there, but 1 minute away, that gate's wide open. It's also just annoying watching so many people break the law and get away with it.
Or at least most of it.
Right, should we go over here to these guys here? Excuse me, gents.
Hello, hello.
You're on camera, mate. You're bang to rights.
Just step to the side and...
All right, thanks very much, guys. It's the same with bike theft, phone theft, tool theft, shoplifting, drugs in town centres, weird Turkish barber shops. It's all chipping away at society. The state needs to reassert itself and go after lawbreakers.
I mean, he's sort of the political version of Chalajonica there, I think. Paul, you questioned something about that there just when we were watching it?
Well, I just think, A, he is rubbish Batman, but B, the last bit...
10 million people have seen that video.
He was doing really well with this litany of crimes and antisocial behaviour that we would all get behind, and then Turkish barbers come into it for some reason. I love a good Turkish barber. What's wrong with Turkish barbers?
There's nothing wrong with Turkish barbers per se. There's one town in Wales where there are 14 Turkish barbers. I'm sure all of them are totally legitimate businesses, but there is evidence to suggest that sometimes the proliferation of these businesses does not lead to people having their hair cut.
It's also true of nail bars, those weird American candy stores and everything else, you know. And so why he picked out Turkish barbers is just a weird thing to say. The whole thing is a bit weird.
Why are you against barbers, Paul? Declare your interest.
Well, I love it. I love a good Turkish barber, believe it or not having much hair, but they do the ears and the eyebrows and all of that and the hot towel.
Have you ever had the wax up your nose where they yank it out?
I took my son to do that as a sort of rite of passage, and he's never forgiven me. I mean, it's incredibly painful.
I quite like.
It's sadomasochism, I think, in a sort of polite form. But
it's 11:15 in the morning. Joe, I'm not quite sure what my next question is, but what did you think of Robert Jenrick?
And I was impressed by that. I like that, but it's just highlighting another problem that nobody's tackling. You know, we've got...
Well, TfL would say that actually the numbers of people fare dodging have gone down dramatically.
It's still 1 in 25.
It's still wrong, and it shouldn't be happening, but it has gone down, TfL.
I mean, I see loads of people. That's
the evidence.
In this office, I would say the vast majority of people get...
Dodge their fares? No.
No, they don't dodge their fares. They certainly don't. Although we could take a nice class libel action against you for that. No, the majority of people have just been talking to friends, family, and they say we all see fare dodgers. And also, if they're dodging a fare, how does TfL know they're dodging a fare? They know who's dodging a fare and being caught. Well, but if you're not being caught, you know, that's another issue.
You and I use trains a lot, don't we? And the quality of public behaviour on trains has declined markedly. Music being played out loud is one of my personal bugbears.
Well, the Lib Dems said they want to fine people £1,000 for that.
Well, I would double it. I would do £2,000, and I think actually it is against railway bylaw, so people should stand up to that kind of thing. I wrote a piece about this very thing and got a very good reaction to it.
If I do Duolingo, does that count? if it's educational, can you still do it?
You don't play things out of your phone on the train, do you, Joe?
I've got headphones.
Yeah, you got headphones. That's fine. That's okay.
This is people just playing music to the carriage.
How are people managing to fare dodge? I mean, not that I'd ever want to.
They just push through. So they push through. So the thing is, or I was actually chatting to someone in the office about this literally yesterday, and he said what happens is he was going through the barrier. This is at a London station, but you can do this at other stations right around the country as well. He was going through, and it wasn't anything to do with him. He didn't know what was happening because his back was to the fare dodger, who then just, as he's going through, literally as the door is open, push into him, push forward, the two of them go through together.
That's tailgating,
but physically pushing him through.
Well, it's disgusting,
and the two of them going together.
Absolutely, and it shouldn't be allowed. And people sitting in first class without first class tickets as well annoys me. I think, well, why do they think they have the right to do that?
Middle class problems there, I think, Paul.
I'm not in the first class carriage. I'm saying I've bought my ticket at fair and square, but other people are then just taking the mickey, aren't they? That's my point.
We'll talk more about Lord Hermer in a minute. We'll talk about Axel Rudakubana, the Southport murderer, allowed to buy treats in prison such as Maltesers and crisps. Yes, really. We'll get your thoughts as well. Sue's been in touch about Sir Christopher Chope. Says, I thought he was being refreshingly honest and showing some contrition for a Conservative. He should come over to reform, says Sue in West Sussex. Sue, I thought a lot of what Sir Christopher was saying was pretty reformy to me. I don't think he's a Corbynist, so let me tell you. Dan in Kent says, morning Peter, the century of centrist politics has somehow lost its common sense over the years, and that's why we have a rise in left and right-wing politics. Thank you to Another person who says, Peter, stop trying to give credibility to Kemi Badenoch's clearly insane rantings. Well, I'm sure she's not insane, but that is how people are responding to this. And Brad in Cambridge says, every week I hear Paul Richards making statements predicting a fall off in support for Nigel Farage, and every time without fail Nigel's support grows. Wishful thinking, Paul?
Well, maybe, but I think now that they've got lots of councillors, I think there'll be a real test of their policies in action now that they're running...
They'll have a record.
Yeah, exactly. They're running Kent and Northumberland. You know, big chunks of England are now under their control. So let's see what they do with the actual power.
John says, I don't really care what Reform's policies are. I'm still voting for them. Lots more to discuss with Joe and Paul. Stay with us here on Talk.
Don't you realise how you embarrassed us? Trump is evil.
They were saying that, yeah.
Yes, they were saying that. And well, Elon was saying that, and he's evil, and you know, you're also evil to
support him. How has it gone so much full circle?
Well, you know,
what's his journey
they
since then?
experienced the Biden presidency, and when they experienced the Biden presidency, they realised that this group of people were out to destroy everything of value in the United States, including their own businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch. Gary says there is no doubt Kemi Badenoch is out of her depth as Conservative Party leader, but to be fair, so would anybody doing that job at the moment. Robert Jenrick should be careful what he wishes for, because if he gets to be leader, he will do no better than her. It's like throwing a diamond into a dung heap. It might sparkle for a while, but eventually it will be consumed by everything around it, says Gary. That's an arresting image, or perhaps an image for which she should be arrested. This Kemi Badenoch story, it is kind of astonishing. She has said that Nigel Farage and Reform UK are basically Corbynism with a Union Jack. I just want to play again. This is an interview she's given to Rod Liddell on Times Radio. Let's just hear a little bit of what Kemi Badenoch has said.
There's only one policy really that Reform has that could be talked about as right-wing, and that is on immigration, which we talk about every single week. We have policies on immigration, they don't. I think the last thing they said they were going to announce on immigration was a minister for deportations. We already have two ministers for deportations, the immigration minister and the Home Secretary. It's just not serious. This isn't centre-right politics. It's Corbynism with a Union Jack. It's nationalisation. It's lifting the cap off to child benefit. These are Jeremy Corbyn's policies with Nigel Farage fronting them. And this is the thing that a lot of the people who keep talking about unite the right don't understand. This is not a right-wing party in the sense that I understand it. It is a party that wants to tell people that they can have whatever they like, and if they can't have it, it's because of those bad guys over there.
We're going to continue to talk about this. Gawain Tyler is a former advisor to Nigel Farage and will be with us in a few minutes' time. But we're still on the debate desk with Joe Wheeler and Paul Richards. Just before I go to them, just want to read out a couple of messages here. Kemi's drivel shows the Tories have learned nothing. Reform is the last chance. We, the ordinary people, have to save England. Danny in Essex says Badenoch is academically intelligent, but with the common sense of a lemon. And you can't educate a lemon. Fact, says Danny. You can't help a lemon, I suppose. You could lemonade. Dawn says, morning Peter, I have never known a time when our leading MPs are of such low quality. Where have the political giants gone? A glance at the government front bench is reminiscent of a carry-on film, says Dawn. Well, we're going to carry on up the debate desk with Joe Wheeler and Paul Richards, who are with us. Thank you so much for joining us. A big story in the front of the Daily Telegraph today. Foreigners claiming £1 billion a month in benefits. What do you make of this story, Joe?
Well, I happened to catch on Twitter Neil O'Brien's piece, which is also been published, I think, in the Telegraph.
He's a Conservative MP.
Yeah, and he's saying that this is the tip of the iceberg, and the DWP won't release the figures for the other half of it. And I mean, this is an absolutely astonishing amount of money. It's doubled since March 2022, from 461 million to 941 million. We cannot cope with this. We cannot sustain that kind of growth. He says as well, benefit spending and migration, it's all happening too fast. Starmer's promises to smash the gangs and stop these vast immigration figures, it's not happening. And he goes on to talk about the fact that about half of the households in the centre of London have the head of the household who is foreign born. And we're all travelling into work from the suburbs because and it's costing a lot of money. We're going past these people. This going back to the whole Nigel Farage and reform. This is why people are angry. This is why people are objecting. This is why they are voting anywhere but Conservative and Labour.
Paul, what do you make of this story?
Well, I don't think it's because of small boats. I think it is because of the large surge of legal migration, particularly under Boris Johnson, to be fair. The Boris surge, that led to an extra, was it, 1 million or whatever it was. But it is a entirely broken system. I mean, that is the bottom line. And as Joe says, it's entirely unsustainable. And the question then will be, well, what's Labour going to do about it? And there are rumblings amongst Labour MPs to say, look, this is not what we signed up for. It's not fair on British working people that so much is going into this. And I think the key answer to this is work. We need to get people off benefits and into work by whatever means, whether it's training, apprenticeships, forced labour schemes, I don't care, but just get people off a lifestyle of benefits and actually into jobs where they're paying tax and contributing.
Just a quick word from you both on two other stories, if that's all right. The Southport murderer Axel Rudy Cubana allowed to buy treats in prison, such as Maltesers and crisps. This is despite throwing scorching water over a prison guard in a horror attack. The crisis in our prisons continues. Why on earth is he getting any treats? The guy shouldn't have another cup of tea in his life. He shouldn't be anywhere near boiling water. Joe?
Well, my thoughts on on what should happen to Rudy Cubana is not broadcastable, but certainly it won't involve Maltesers and crisps.
Paul?
Well, the Sun editorial this morning is interesting, where it says a lot of people would support the death penalty here. Now, I personally wouldn't, but I certainly don't think they should have any kind of mollycoddling or feather bedding in prison. It should be hard time for the rest of his life.
We've had that conversation before as to whether prison is a punishment or whether it's rehabilitation. And in some cases it's one, in some cases the other. I hope this guy never sees freedom ever again, in which case his existence should be as tough as it possibly could be.
I can't see any way someone like Axel Rudy Cubana can be rehabilitated. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's unlikely. I want to talk about just briefly, just before we go to the news, about Richard Hermer, the Attorney General. He has expressed regret and said his words were clumsy when he compared people who want to not quite withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights, but do bits of it. There are certain bits of it that various political parties want to withdraw from sections of that. He has said this is reminiscent of what the Nazis did. Never good in politics, Paul, to call people Nazis or to use this kind of language.
I mean, it never is. Hermer is a man who earns a living through words, and my suspicion is he knew exactly what he was saying, and to call it clumsy is sort of post-event rationalisation of the worst kind. So I think he should consider his position. I think he may be a brilliant lawyer, but he's a very bad politician, and he's in a political role. He's there because he's, obviously
Starmer's BFF.
Long-standing friends with the leader. The Prime Minister, but I just don't think he's in the right role, and I think this shows yet again that he needs somebody with a political touch rather than just simply a legal brain, and therefore he should be thinking about what he should do next.
In a word, Joe, resign, yes or no?
Yes.
And Joe, there is one story I want to ask you both about, but particularly Joe. There is, can't think why. I
can't think why.
There is a story that argues that if alcohol were discovered or was new at this time, it wouldn't ever be marketed. It wouldn't be legal. It's so toxic. And in fact, if it were to be discovered now, we would be allowed 1 glass of wine a year. Good idea, Joe?
Not a good idea. Besides which, there is another study that says 3 to 12 small glasses of wine a month gives you a 38% lower risk of heart disease compared with those who drank less. Also found that a glass of wine each night half the risk of suffering heart attacks and strokes compared with people who did not drink. Now, if you're going to follow one study or the other, I like the last
You like
two.
the latter one.
Yes.
You'll raise a glass to that one. Paul, what about you?
Well, I don't want to be a killjoy. I don't drink.
I don't drink either.
And I'm much happier not drinking.
It's lonely up here on the moral high ground.
I know,
it must be.
You know, it's a terrible thing, and I don't mind other people doing it. I haven't signed the pledge or not temperance or anything. It's not religious, but I do think a non-alcoholic lifestyle is a better lifestyle, and you save a lot of money, Joe. You can spend a lot of money on other things, you know, if you just cut
The problem
out
is
wine.
I spend it on Diet Coke, which is arguably about as bad for my health. I mean, certainly probably worse for my health than what Joe's drinking anyway. But
I think a lot of the things we consume in everyday life, if you tested those, they're probably not very good for you either.
It always reminds me of what Donald Trump says, which is he's never seen a thin person drink Diet Coke. Joe, thank you very much. That's Joe Wheeler there, political commentator and meteorologist, and Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor. We're going to talk to former advisor to Nigel Farage, Gawain Tyler, in a minute. What does he make of Kemi Badenoch saying that Reform UK is Corbynism with a Union Jack? An extraordinary comment. Stay with us.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's an awful lot to discuss, including extraordinary comments by Kemi Badenoch about the fact that she believes that Reform UK is quite simply Corbynism with a Union Jack. That's the question we're asking today. Do you think Reform UK is simply Corbynism with a Union Jack? Give me a ring, let me know. 0344 499 1000. And why has Kemi Badenoch said this? Why she said it now? Is it the right thing to say? I think it's a slightly strange comment. It was in an interview interview with our stablemates, our colleagues over at Times Radio. Lots to discuss, and we'll do that in a second with Gawain Tyler, who's a former advisor to Nigel Farage. Let's see what he thinks. You can get in touch on any other issue as well. We're talking about defence, the fact that the defence budget is going to be 3% of what the country makes. That's going to be by 2034. Is that enough? Is it too much? Are you happy for money to be taken out of other things like the NHS, like schools, like housing, for example, to go into that budget for defence? Also, Starmer's legal chief regretting the Nazi jibe at an anti-ECHR Tories on reform. Are you happy? He has said that he regrets his clumsy words, but he hasn't apologised. Foreigners claiming £1 billion a month in benefits. We'll talk about the rise of fraud in the UK as well, and about the United States. Lots to discuss in regard to Elon Musk and that slightly strange press conference that he did with Donald Trump yesterday. 0344 499 1000. That's the number to call to get your voice on the air. Let me know your thoughts. And you know it's my show, but it's your show too. I want to make sure as many comments, calls, voice notes, however you want to communicate, we'll get it on the air. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222. You can send me a text message with that number and be sure to put the word talk in it so it comes up on the screen in front of me. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on that main number 0344 499 1000. Well, Kemi Badenoch has given an interview to Rod Liddle over on our sister station, Times Radio. This is part of what she said to Rod Liddle.
There's only one policy, really, that Reform has that could be talked about as right-wing, and that is on immigration, which we talk about every single week. We have policies on immigration, they don't. I think the last thing they said they were going to announce on immigration was a minister for deportations. We already have two ministers for deportations, the immigration minister and the home secretary. It's just not serious. This isn't centre-right politics. It's Corbynism with a Union Jack. It's nationalisation. It's lifting the cap off to child benefit. These are Jeremy Corbyn's policies with Nigel Farage fronting them. And this is the thing that a lot of the people who keep talking about unite the right don't understand. This is not a right-wing party in the sense that I understand it. It is a party that wants to tell people that they can have whatever they like, and if they can't have it, it's because of those bad guys over there.
Well, Gawain Tyler is a former advisor to Nigel Farage. Gawain, you're very welcome to the programme. Apparently, Reform UK has no policy on immigration and is Corbynism with a Union Jack. What do you make of that?
I'm just thinking, I was listening to your intro, and you've got Labour Party calling us Nazis, you've got the Tories calling us communists. We're just living rent-free, aren't we? We're stuck in their cerebral vortex, and they cannot think beyond it. The idea that we are, I don't know, it's laughable, utterly laughable. And if you're going to make an insult, as Kemi's trying to do there, it's got to be believable for it to work. And this is just preposterous. Yes, there's a couple of issues where we are not traditionally on the hard right. Yeah, good. That's a good thing. We're more pragmatic than that. But, I mean, the idea we have no other policies, well, net zero, on the diversity and inclusion agenda, on the woke agenda, on across the board, lower taxation for people. Yeah, I'm not sure what planet Kemi's living on.
It is interesting, though, this week, in that we heard Nigel Farage talk about a lot of different things. We heard him talking about a lot more than immigration, and then of course with the local elections there was a focus on a lot of local issues. You know, Reform will fill in your potholes and they'll empty your bin and they'll make sure that local services work. Okay, fine, perfectly reasonable campaigning thing to have, but really what happened on Tuesday was quite interesting, especially as Reform are doing so well in the polls, and the fact that Nigel Farage put a lot more meat on the bone. But Kemi Badenoch saying that there are no policies there, I find really, really curious. Also, she says that everything apart from the immigration policy, even though there isn't a policy in her mind, are the same as Corbynism.
I'm not sure if there's anything in her mind at present. It's just blind panic.
You think she's panicked?
Yeah, well, so would I be if I was on 16% against Reform's 32. She's in blind panic mode, and it's not credible what she's saying. It's all very well pointing fingers and shouting, but it's just not credible. And I don't know. as I say, I heard the interview, just played it, and I ended up laughing because it was so silly.
I mean, she is a conviction politician. She clearly believes this. Where does this come from, do you think?
I don't think she clearly believes it. I think she clearly needs to say something. And
has this been manufactured, do you think, Gawain? Because, you know, you and I both know from both of our previous careers working in politics, sometimes you do think about slogans. You think about, what are you going to say in the interview? What's the headline going to be? Yeah. Are you going to say something eye-catching? Because Corbynism with a Union Jack, I mean, it's a memorable phrase. Whether it's the right phrase or not is another matter.
The thing is, a car crash is eye-catching. And that's what it seems to be. It just seems to be, as I say, driven by panic. It's not driven by thought and consideration. She knows full well where we stand on a whole range of issues. And not only was Farage talking this week about some of the welfare stuff, that by going around the country and talking to people and seeing the pain that's been inflicted by this government and the last, then you have to bend a bit. You can't just be ideological. It's a fact. You just can't do that. But he then goes to Vegas and starts talking about the future of international finance. We have got no policies. We literally delivered a new policy yesterday. Oh, she clearly didn't notice, but fine.
Gawain, it's an interesting one, because one policy that is on the left, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, I'm not saying Reform UK have to be on the right or left, I honestly don't think it matters anymore. No. But one of the things that Nigel Farage is committed to is lifting the two-child benefit cap. Yes, I can honestly say, in 4.5 years of presenting programmes on the station, I've never had an anti-Farage reaction like it to anything he has said. I mean, you understand it? I mean,
I do understand.
Why do you think he's done it then?
That is, he's looked at the demographics, and the demographics of a country are its future. And the fact is, we're on 1.3, I think, per couple, and that is just not enough.
I think it's a little bit higher than that, but it's not much higher. It's 1.44 or something like that. But you're generally right, Gawain. Yeah.
In the ballpark.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at that, and this is, as he said in that press conference, this is not a silver bullet. This is one of a significant range of policies we're bringing together to defend and protect the family. And yes, this isn't ideologically on the left or right. This one looks more on the left of centre. But if you're trying to improve the situation of the country as a whole, you need to look at the whole policy in general and say, is ideology the only way forward?
Okay.
And if it is, fine, but ideology has failed us many, many times. And a little bit more common sense, a little bit more looking how people are living their lives and suffering needs to be addressed. And what Reform are trying to do is to square a bit of a circle here. And there's a lot more work to be done. There are many other areas of policy to help people, give people the hope. Because people don't have... The main reason people are not having children is they look at the future. They can't afford a house. They can't do this. They can't do the other. You've got 28-year-olds on a good job living at home. They should be out and living their lives, but they are constrained by the economic facts.
Okay.
And the net zero agenda, for example, if you're whacking up the price of energy, the most important single thing you can do is to reduce the cost of energy, make energy cheap and plentiful and reliable. And the Conservatives in 14 years have made it expensive and unreliable. And the Labour Party are going to make it worse.
Okay.
So that's where we're at.
Okay, Gawain, thank you. That's Gawain Tyler there, former advisor to Nigel Farage. Thank you to Mary in County Down, who has been in touch and says Tories and Labour have armies of special advisors and pay fortunes to pollsters and other purveyors of political wisdom. Plus, they have huge numbers of local councillors who are apparently close to the grassroots, steeped in their community's opinions. Yet they seem shell-shocked, blindsided by the popularity of Reform UK and Nigel Farage and devoid of ideas on how to deal with them. Reform is booming because people have seen all that the big two have to offer and they're tired of it. Unchecked immigration, trans ideology, failing public services. When you leave the people behind, they will leave you, says Mary in County Down. Thank you to Stuart, who says the Labour Party know that they have zero chance of winning the next election in 4 years. Isn't it an absolute disgrace that their legacy will be taking £4 billion a year off disabled people and giving £1 billion a month to migrants? The Labour Party used to be the People's Party. It's now a Davos-controlled puppet show. Dave in South Gloucester. Regarding the debate about the ECHR and the human rights law, it's simple. Anything that works to the detriment and harm of the country and people, as these do, and the UNHCR for that matter, have to be changed or got rid of. It's a matter of national, societal, and economic necessity, despite Hermer's odious accusations, says Dave in South Gloucester, talking about Lord Hermer there, Richard Hermer. Big mates with Keir Starmer. He got him a peerage, put him in the House of Lords, made him Attorney General, the most senior government law officer, and he thinks that anybody who disagrees with him on the European Convention on Human Rights is a Nazi. Rob in London says, morning Peter, Badenoch just hasn't got it. Seeing her take on Starmer and Prime Minister's questions is a farce. She's smiling and it all just looks like a game between them with no real conviction whatsoever. What she's good at is insulting reform. Along with Starmer, she needs to go, says Rob in London. Neil says, Cardi P, you really have to question Badenoch's political nous to compare Farage to Corbyn, especially after the kicking that Starmer got during his anti-reform speech this week. Focus on holding the government to account and don't give more airtime to reform. Leslie says, hi Peter, it doesn't matter what Kemi or Starmer says about Farage. The country has had enough of being ignored, broken promises and insulted. I think Leslie perhaps would agree with Mary in County Down there. Lucy in Pimlico in London says, I am surprised people are surprised by Kemi's statement. Really? Like other right-wing politicians around the world, for example Trump, Farage is right-wing socially but left-wing economically. Farage's announcement to lift the two-child benefit cap shouldn't have surprised political commentators because it is straight out of the Trump playbook. The problem is Kemi isn't a gifted enough orator to make that case. Instead, she tried to create a snappy soundbite and it flopped, says Lucy in Pimlico. Chris in Ottershaw, good morning Peter. I don't agree with Reform's policy of removing the ceiling on two-child benefits and I am a bit mystified with it, but as all political parties disagree with some policies as normal, I will be voting Reform. Lots of people getting in touch on Richard Hermer as well. This row continues. He says that it is a matter of regret and it was clumsy. Do you think he should resign? 0344 499 1000. That's the number Chris in Epsom has rung. Let me know your thoughts, Chris. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, Hermer, he knew exactly what he was saying and he didn't apologise, as you said. He said it was clumsy words. So he knows what he means. And he's not making any apology for it. It's ridiculous, Peter. We've now got Starmer, Felipe Sands, the KC for Mauritius, Perna, and Cherry Blair, all out of the matrix chambers. You've got Christine Lagarde, the chair of the ECB, is stepping down to take over. She's another human rights lawyer who's friends with all of them, to take over the WEF. And Kemi Badenoch, absolutely useless. I mean, completely useless. Who the hell was inviting Starmer to give that, what I would call a promotional video for reform?
Do you know what, Chris? It's worse than that for Starmer. Because he was meant to be, I'm not quite sure what it is, but there was an event on mainland Europe. It was some sort of award ceremony that he was meant to be at on Thursday. The Times is reporting that. And he said that it was so serious what Nigel Farage did on Tuesday. Obviously Nigel Farage gave that speech, made all his different points in regard to policy, that Starmer had to respond to it in that way. So he voluntarily went to St Helens. He voluntarily did that event. And it has totally backfired for him, I think.
Well, he's inept, and so are his advisors. I mean, I sent you an X earlier on. I'll just repeat what I put in the X. But I'm 64. I'm a third-generation Tory. I'm a Thatcher boy. She gave my generation the opportunity to improve our lot in life and to socially and improve social mobility for us all. I never got to meet her, but I adored her as a politician. I thought she was wonderful. And I did get to meet Norman Tebbit, and he was an amazing, awesome man to talk to. I was lucky enough to spend about an hour with him. But I never joined the Tory party, even though I adored what they did for me and the opportunities they gave to me. But I am now a fully paid-up member of Reform, with a ticket for the conference and a hotel. I have never done that in my life. This country is in such poor condition in every which way you look.
Is Nigel Farage the man to fix it?
he's a conviction politician. I don't agree with all of what he says. I don't agree. There's one word you've been missing out on this two-child cap benefit.
Mm-hmm.
He did say for British families.
Yeah.
But I think it will need some finessing, because there's actually a BBC documentary which was quite amazing. It blew my mind. And that was a guy that arrived here illegally. He's now got 3 wives. He doesn't work. He's got 3 wives. They've got 8 children between the 3 wives, and they have 3 council houses.
Yeah, you're not the first person who's brought that up to me, Chris, and certainly I must go and watch it at some stage. We've just got to move on, Chris, but you made some really, really good points there, and I really appreciate them. Some breaking news here on Talking, that is, police are investigating after a car collided with pedestrians, leaving 4 people injured. This is emergency crews that rushed to the scene in De Montfort Street in Leicester shortly after midnight today. 4 people, 2 men and 2 women injured in the late night collision. All were quickly rushed to hospital after emergency crews arrived. A 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent and causing serious injury by dangerous driving following the collision. He is in custody. He's been questioned by detectives. If there's any more on this between now and 1 o'clock, we will, of course, bring it to you. Defence is a huge issue. The amount of money we spend on it is being decided at the moment. How much should we spend? And are you happy for the different pots for a bit of health money to go into defence? What about education, housing? We'll speak to Simon Diggins, military and defence analyst, in a second about the new era of threat and the Defence Review. Stay with us here on Talk.
Don't you realise how you've embarrassed us? Trump is evil.
They were saying that, yeah.
Yes, they were saying that. And Elon was saying that, and he's evil, and you know, you're also evil to
support him. How has it gone so much full circle? What's his journey
they
since then?
experienced the Biden presidency, and when they experienced the Biden presidency, they realised that this group of people were out to destroy everything of value in the United States, including their own businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I brought you the breaking news just before the break in regard to the man who was arrested after reports a car collided with a number of pedestrians in Leicester. This is 2 men and 2 women have been injured following the incident shortly after midnight. Now, we've been scouring all sorts of different media. We've been looking at how this is reported, and at no point has the ethnicity of the man been put forward. We're told he's a 31-year-old man. We don't know his ethnicity. What we found this week with Merseyside Police is that they said that it was a 53-year-old white man. That was in regard to the person who has now been charged, and we've got to be really careful what we say in regard to those allegations, in regard to his alleged involvement in what happened in Liverpool. But what Leicestershire Police haven't done is given us any information other than 31-year-old man. Finn is the producer today. Finn, can you ring Leicester Police and ask them what his ethnicity is? And if they won't tell you, ask why. If they'll tell us before the end of the programme, I'll tell you. For the meantime, I just want to talk to Simon Diggins. He is a military analyst and a former senior army officer, of course, Colonel Simon Diggins. Simon, great to talk to you. A new era of threat amid the changing face of war. This is the UK Defence Review coming on Monday. We're told that 3% of GDP, of what the country makes, will be spent on defence. Is that something you welcome?
Peter, good morning to you. Of course, I welcome any increase in defence expenditure because the threat we face is real and it's ever present. We know that from the events of sabotage we've had in this country. We've had cyber attacks, we've had assassination in this country, and that's just in UK. Go across Europe and it goes on, and we've got an ongoing war in Russia. Talk to the Prime Ministers of Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, talk to the Polish Prime Minister, talk to the Finns, and they believe that Russia could be ready to start a war against a NATO country in 2027. And not just me, you talked to me as a senior officer, thank you for that. General Petraeus, senior commander, former head of the CIA, talked about an attack on Lithuania 2 days ago in London within a matter of a couple of years, and long before the 2034 date, which the government has put for getting the defence expenditure up to 3%.
And if this happens by 2034, that is what is proposed here. It's really interesting that the Defence Secretary John Healey, we hope to speak to him tomorrow. I'm not sure if that's going to go ahead or not. We'll find out. But he has certainly been talking to the Times newspaper today, saying it is certain that it is happening. Is 2034 soon enough? Should it be done over a shorter period of time? Because when you don't get that certainty and when you get a much longer time frame, it can be very difficult to plan, of course, not just in government in general, but I would imagine when it comes to logistics and when things run out and so on, and when things need to be replaced, Simon, that's a big thought as well.
No, it is, and you can't just turn the tap on with defence logistics and supplies and expect the thing to emerge immediately. But nonetheless, you still need the money earlier. You need to be able to build up the factories, you need to be able to build up the stock to get on with the planning. You also need to have an attitude which says you buy off the shelf commercially now and start messing around. You look at some of the vehicle types that we've been trying to bring in. A Boxer is a classic example. The future rapid effects system going on. It's taken years and years and years, endless modifications, all of which cost money and all of which ensure that the equipment is not with the front line. The Danish face exactly the same issue as we've got. The Danish Prime Minister told the Danish Chief of Defence Staff, buy. In other words, just get on with it. That's the attitude we need from the government, not this rather careful, Treasury-led, we'll do it when we can afford to do it, and probably by 2034. Not good enough.
I talked to another military expert recently who said this is essentially like insurance. It's almost an insurance plan. You've got to pay for it. You've got to do it. But of course, we are in a cost of living crisis. We're hearing from Rachel Reeves that in 11 days' time, when she gives the spending review, she's going to have to find cuts from many, many other budgets. Do you think the public should be relaxed? And if so, why, in regard to other pots of money, other budgets that aren't perhaps government priorities going into defence?
I think we do have to have a proper conversation with the British people about the cost of defence. It's not just a question of defence in terms of weapons and armed forces personnel, but it's also national resilience. We haven't had that conversation for a very long time. Bear in mind that when we get the increase in money that's going to come through in the next couple of years, we'll get it, it's in 25, 26, we'll get it back to the approximate level in real terms that it was in 2010. And that, with all the things that's changed since then. So we haven't had a proper conversation, but there will have to be some sacrifices made. But look at where the money's also been spent. We're spending £101 million per annum now to give the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. £101 million pays for approximately 3 infantry battalions. 2 years' worth of that expenditure would pay for a frigate. So we seem to be able to find the money for some things. Why can't we find the money for defence?
And that is a fair point. I wonder what you see as the biggest threats, because it's interesting this defence review is apparently not going to call China straightforwardly a threat. There's different language they're using in regard to China, but not places like Russia.
No, I think there is a distinction. I mean, we are in a position what you call strategic competition with China. We both are a significant trading partner, which we need, but we're also very wary of some of their behaviours, particularly in relation to places like Taiwan and other places where we have an interest. And we also are in competition with them for influence, soft power across the region, how they behave. With Russia, it's much more direct. Russia is a revanchist power determined to try and recapture some of the power it had in 1990 at the end of the Cold War. And Putin repeatedly, every 2 to 3 years, has started a war since he took charge, whether it be in Chechnya, in Georgia, Azerbaijan, you name it, he's prepared to fight. And of course, he's done it now in Ukraine and sustained this extraordinary campaign in Ukraine at a cost of up to 1 million casualties from Russians alone. So that's the kind of threat we're up against. And he seeks to restore Russia's great power, as I said, to where it was in about 1990. And that is of direct threat to us and to the peace of Europe as a whole.
Simon, thank you. That is Simon Diggins, Colonel Simon Diggins, a military analyst and former senior officer. We found the press release from Leicester Police. We are getting in touch with them now as well in regard to this man who's been arrested after reports of a car colliding with a number of pedestrians in Leicester. 2 men, 2 women, they've been injured following the incident in De Montfort Street shortly after midnight. A man is in police custody. He's been questioned by detectives. This is, of course, a very serious incident, but it's not as serious as what happened in Liverpool. There are charges in that case, so I'm going to be really, really careful about what I say. However, something different happened on Monday, and we were told on Monday evening that the suspect, and now the man who has been charged in that case in Liverpool, we were told he is a 53-year-old white British man. That is the information the police in Merseyside released very, very quickly, within a couple of hours. There's lots of speculation online about what had happened. Now we're in a situation where something which is not as serious, but is still a very serious thing, of course, for everybody involved, and we hope that those people who have been injured recover very, very soon, just as we do with the people in Liverpool. But what is interesting is that all we are told from this press release, and we've gone to the website of Leicester Police and we found it, is that we're told a 31-year-old man. Why don't we know his ethnicity? Now, he might be white, he might be black, he might be Indian, he might be Pakistani. We don't know. What we do know is that he's a 31-year-old man. But why aren't we told his ethnicity? Why is there a different approach from Leicester Police? There might be a perfectly reasonable explanation. We're getting in touch with them right now, behind the scenes, asking them why. Surely there has to be consistency in all of this. And actually, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary had a big report 3 weeks ago saying that this kind of openness was needed in policing communications. There may well be good reason for this, but I'd like to know why. First rule of journalism, be curious. We're going to find out why from Leicestershire Police. If they let us know by the end of the programme, I will let you know. If they don't let me know by the end of the programme, I will tweet it in the next few days. You know me, I'm pretty dogged. The last time with the NHS, for example, Wes Streeting had him on the programme a few weeks ago. He didn't know the answer to something. It took me 9 days to get the answer out of the Department of Health. Essentially, they didn't know the answer to the question. But I kept going at them with the producers behind the scenes and my colleagues every single day, asking them the question. And we'll continue doing that with Leicestershire Police in this incident. Lots to discuss here on Talk. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Tracy from Wakefield. He says, I'm a Reform member, however, I agree with Kemi on one area, and that is the 2-child cap. Nigel has to remember the red wall are working class. We want decent jobs and decent wages. I find it insulting that he believes that benefits will be a game changer for us unless he is chasing the vote of the high level of immigrants they have shipped in. or they have shipped north, says Tracy. Tracy, it's an interesting one. His policy is actually that it should be for people who are in this country already, not immigrants coming to this country, and he wants immigration to, that's the net zero that he actually wants on that. So I wonder, I'm not saying you're mistaken at all, I'm not saying that, Tracy, I'm just wondering whether Nigel Farage has made a misstep here with the idea, but also whether he's not communicating it quite correctly. I wonder what you think about that. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. In just a second, we're going to talk actually about immigration. We're going to talk about foreigners claiming £1 billion a month in benefits. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I want to talk now about the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Big story saying that foreigners are claiming £1 billion a month in benefits. 8 weeks of payments wipe out any savings made from scrapping the winter fuel cash. Benefits claims by households with at least one foreign national have doubled to nearly £1 billion a month in the last 3 years, government figures show. This is Conservative and Labour failure here. Claire Pearsall is a former government special advisor on immigration. Claire, what do you make of this?
Well, it's quite an eye-catching headline, but I think that we need to delve down into the figures a little bit more as to what households are meant to be made up of, because it's households with at least one foreign national. So therefore, it would assume that there are British nationals in those houses, people with indefinite leave to remain. Otherwise, those benefits couldn't be counted in the first place. They couldn't be claimed. So I think we need a little bit more detail on it. But what it does show is that there is an enormous increase in the amount year on year that is being claimed. So I think we can have a better conversation about who is coming into the country, how many people are coming into the country. And I think people are going to be looking at this saying, you've taken winter fuel payments away from elderly people. However, the bill for foreign nationals is enormous. And that sense of fairness in the UK, people are rightly going to be angry.
This is something that's going to be seized upon, I'm sure, by Nigel Farage and others, saying, hold on a second, we need to sort out welfare in this country. He's talked about the two-child benefit cap. He says he wants to lift it, certainly for people born in this country and from here originally anyway, not to give it to people who would come in under his plans. I just wonder, in regard to this, what you make of what Graham Stringer, a senior Labour backbencher, former leader of Manchester City Council, said. Such vast spending on foreign claimants should not be a priority. He says, given the state of the country's finances, everything has to be looked at and reassessed. The expenditure on foreign claimants, in my opinion, is not a priority. We have to be absolutely clear on what our priorities are, and in my view, these people are not a priority. It has to be judged against potential cuts in PIP, personal independence payments, and the winter fuel allowance and other benefits that may be cut for British citizens.
Well, I think we're starting to see the level of discontent within the Labour Party itself with what benefits are looking to be cut. The pain that you've just been through with winter fuel allowance is now being passed on to those with disabilities. So the Labour Party are looking less like a Labour Party and are chasing a much more what would be viewed normally as a Conservative welfare promise. So I think there's a level of discontent, there's a level of anger with the new MPs. They're not particularly happy at being led down this path. And I do wonder if this is now the first stage of the rebellion in the House of Commons when that vote comes forward.
It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. And let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Claire, can I just ask you about Richard Hermer, Lord Hermer? You're a political veteran, a political commentator. This is the Attorney General, someone who has who is a very, very senior, well, the most senior government law officer anyway. He's used this Nazi jibe in regard to the European Convention of Human Rights and people who want to derogate from it, who want to take bits of it but not the whole thing. Should he resign, do you think? Is this serious enough, or has he's already said he's clumsy and he regrets what he's saying? What do you think of this?
It was an appalling statement to make. And if you're the top legal mind of the United Kingdom, you're put into that office for your expertise and ability, to come out with an incredibly offensive, stupid comment, I think leads you to believe he shouldn't still remain in the job. He's apologised for what he classes as clumsy words. But can you imagine if this was a Conservative MP or a Reform MP or somebody of those political colours who had said this? People would be on the streets calling for resignations, calling for somebody to be locked up. So why aren't we seeing the same level of anger? I don't think they were clumsy words. I think they were ridiculous. And the last thing any politician should do is cling on to 1930s Nazi Germany as any kind of descriptor for what's happening.
I'll tell you what was about clumsy, Claire, me calling you a veteran. That's never a good, that's never a good thing. Oh, do you know what? There is a political commentator who we both know, who I referred to as a veteran political correspondent once on air. And I mean, if this person is not a veteran political commentator, I'm not sure quite how many people are, because he's in his 60s and he got really, really annoyed with me. So you only being 27, Claire, you've every right to be annoyed with me. But I don't think you are, because you're smiling, which is good.
No. I take it with the love it was meant with.
Always, Claire. Thank you so much. Claire Pearsall there, former Government Special Advisor on Immigration. Plenty to discuss. What do you think of her comments? 0344 499 1000. Didn't Sir Mark Rowley call on police forces to be more transparent, says Tony? Yes, he did. And we are asking Leicestershire Police today. They have released this statement. They've talked about the fact that 4 people currently remain in hospital. Investigation is ongoing as they continue to establish the full circumstances and events leading up to an incident. This is a man who is in police custody being questioned by officers after a horrible accident there, or a horrible incident. Maybe it's not an accident, we don't know. We do ask that people do not speculate about this incident, including on social media, in order to allow a thorough investigation to take place. Okay, I don't want people to speculate about this. I don't want people to say what might have happened, or what might not have happened, or why it happened, or whether it did or didn't happen in a certain way. However, what is a perfectly legitimate question of Leicestershire Police, which we are asking today, is what is this man's ethnicity? We're told it's a man, we're told his age. What we're not told is his ethnicity. We were told that by Merseyside Police. We've we've talked to Leicestershire Police. I'm going to get an update on the break from the producers who've been involved with that, and I will let you know what they say. If they're not telling us this person's ethnicity, I'd like to know why. We're going to talk in just a second about the rise of fraud in the UK. Let us know what you think about that too, and indeed everything we're talking about today. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Don't you realise how you embarrassed us? Trump is evil.
They were saying that, yeah.
Yes, they were saying that. Well, Elon was saying that, and he's evil, and you know, you're also evil to
support him. How has it gone so much full circle? What's his journey
they
since then?
experienced the Biden presidency, and when they experienced the Biden presidency, they realised that this group of people were out to destroy everything of value in the United States, including their own businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we've just had a chat with the producers behind the scenes. They've been in touch with the Leicestershire Police. They've asked us to send in our query on email. We're going to do that right now. A senior producer is on the case right now in the newsroom. And if they don't get back to us in 10 minutes, we're going to ring them again and see what the delay is, because it should be really straightforward. Either you tell us or don't tell us the ethnicity of this man, because they told us the ethnicity in regard to the Liverpool incident. Why can't they do that now? If so, great. If not, why not? So we will ask them. We know his age, and we know that it's a man in this particular incident, this horrible incident that has happened in Leicestershire. Why aren't we being told the ethnicity? That precedent has gone. Why are Leicestershire Police not telling us? We'll keep asking the question, and I'll bring you an update between now and 1 o'clock. Or if they don't give us an update by 1 o'clock, as I say, I will tweet it on my Twitter at Peter Cardwell as soon as I get that information, whenever it is. Now then, I want to talk about fraud in the UK, because there is a huge rise and Britain can lay claim to a lot. Modern football, William Shakespeare, the Victoria sponge cake. Yet according to recent Treasury Committee hearings, the nation is also becoming known for something else, which is fraud. Charlie Nunn, who is the chief executive of Lloyds Bank, has been telling MPs there are attempts to slow down the surge in fraud that makes up 40% of all crime in the UK. I've been a victim of fraud. I've had my details stolen a couple of times. I'm sure many viewers and listeners have too. Let's speak to David Rains. He is a fraud and crime consultant, formerly of the National Drug Prevention Alliance and a senior customs officer. David, why is this such a big thing, particularly in the UK?
Hello, good morning, Peter. Yes, I spent a lot of time after I retired as a private investigator and corporate fraud investigator. So I've got quite a background in it. We're very vulnerable for several reasons. We're a rich society in world terms. We've got a high density of phone and internet uses. We've got a high density of internet banking. Obviously, your Lloyds man comes into that. And we've got, above all, we've got the English language. And a lot of people in the world, all those Nigerian princes, think they can speak English. And so, of course, it's easier to commit a fraud in English than it is in, say, Polish or Lithuanian. Yeah. So there's more and more people prepared to try it on in the UK. And I suppose, my observation is, and I have quite a lot to do with policing in my time, everybody thinks that it can be dealt with by investigation and law enforcement, and it can't. I mean, to think that is sort of as ludicrous as Keir Starmer saying smash the gangs. It just doesn't work like that. Law enforcement is a backstop. It's not the method of control. So what I've advocated, and I used to be very close to the Police and Crime Commissioner where I live, I've advocated what's called target hardening, which means making the public much more resistant. But of course, it's a continual battle. People get older. They lose the ability to distinguish what might be fraud and what might not be fraud.
Do you know what? I'm terrified, David, by what's online about all sorts of things, because fraud, of course, comes in different forms. Yes. This AI is something. I mean, some of those videos of people saying, I'll just be totally honest here, David. I was watching a video about weight loss, and I'm in a position where that's something that
I just looked at your picture online.
Well, you know the battle I face every day, and it is with biscuits. But David, I was watching some. I know it's not strictly fraud, but it was sort of along those lines to some degree, in that there was a video of a very well-known TV doctor, Dr. Hilary Jones, but it wasn't him. It was AI. They were using his voice as AI. They were using his image as AI. I've worked with Hilary. I've worked with him previously. I trust him. I respect him. I think he's a very, very good journalist and doctor. But this video came up, and it looked so much and sounded and it was so almost genuine that I was honestly, I clicked through and I thought, actually, how much does this miracle cure cost? Of course, I then thought, hold on a second here, I'm just going to Google this just to make sure that he's endorsing that. But you know, if 40-year-old.
It's going to get worse, Peter. But what you're pointing up is that AI is going to make the situation much worse.
Yeah.
And the ability to convince people black is white is going to be out there in big league terms. And
I'm really worried, David, because
it isn't just older people who are vulnerable. Everybody's vulnerable.
Well, of course we are, and it's sort of worse than that, because I didn't spend any money or didn't do anything. I was onto it, but I was sort of kicking myself, and I just sort of thought, if I can be taken in by this, and I do, you know. Like many broadcasters, hold myself in a reasonably high regard, thinking, you know, I'm not a stupid person, I hope. Many people may differ with that, David, but I just think there must be loads of people who are intelligent people who get taken in by this stuff all the time. The phone calls, the messages, the texts, all the different ways, the emails, people try to get you, the phishing and all the rest of it. How on earth are we ever going to get a grip on this?
Well, I live in Avon and Somerset, please, Constabulary, and they're actually pretty good. And for my sins, I'm the neighbourhood watch coordinator where I live, which is probably helpful to my village, because I offer them a 24/7/365. They can ring me at any time, and we've sort of.
Can you move beside me, David?
Well, Somerset is paradise.
Okay, might be a bit far for this job.
But Somerset are very good at putting out the messages. They get out on the neighbourhood watch network where I live. We have a WhatsApp group for the whole village. Anybody can join, and these things are all circulated. And if it's individual old people, I sometimes phone them up individually or go and knock on the door and talk to them. But that hasn't stopped in one particular case. We had a national journalist live here, and he got taken by the Microsoft engineer fraud. And he told me afterwards, and he said, I've been stupid, haven't I? And I said, did you give them access to your computer? He said, yes, I did. They told me it was going to crash. And these sort of that's a low-level fraud. You know, they took £230 off him. That's low-level fraud, but intelligent people can fall for that.
He was very lucky only to have £230 taken off him.
The other famous fraud we've had in the village, and we batted it away, was the Dear Dad fraud. You know, this is the text message from the child who says, Mum, Dad, I've lost my phone. I'm using a friend's phone. And I can't get access to my banking. Can you send me some money?
Yeah, my parents have received those. Yeah,
but that's very, very widespread. It's called the Dear Dad fraud in the trade. It's very, very common. But I mean, at the other extreme, I was advising last year a couple who'd lost several £100,000 to a Bulgarian or Romanian investment fraud. And now that's difficult to believe. As somebody was exploring on the internet ways to invest money.
Yes.
They were then approached and emailed by investment organisation, apparently with their address in London. They paid over £100,000 in the first instance, and then successive £100,000, and of course all that money is gone.
Yeah.
Now,
that's horrendous.
On that particular
Absolutely
case,
horrendous.
I took all the details and I reported to the National Crime Agency. They weren't able to take it on, although it had similarities with other cases they have taken on, but they're just overworked. There is a problem with law enforcement in that a lot of law enforcement organisations are quite weak when it comes to investigation fraud, and it takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of time. And, we've got this action fraud where you put reports into, but data goes in, but not much comes out. The only constabulary with a long-term history of doing a lot about fraud was the City of London Police.
Yeah, there's just a lot of people who won't have confidence. They'll think, and as kind of I do, and also there's a big change in the law, actually, which I'm sure you're aware of, David, about 10 or 12 years ago, maybe slightly longer actually, where you don't, if you've bank fraud, for example, you can, in theory, report it to the police, but really it's about reporting it to your bank. And I know this, and I did a bit of journalistic work on it at the time, because what happened with me was I had an email from Amazon, and they said, you have bought a £400 phone, and it will be delivered to this address. So what we had was someone had got my Amazon account, not sure how they did it, but they got it. They'd ordered this phone, and I literally had the guy's name and address. I mean, I literally had that detail. And I reported it to the police, and they said, actually, no, nothing to do with us, you got to tell your bank. I mean, I told the bank and I stopped the transaction, got the money back and whatever. But the police weren't going to take it on.
Describing, Peter, is the resource problem that if you have a couple of officers to investigate that.
But they literally had his name and address.
I know, and there's been recent stuff about stuff being stolen, phones being stolen, and because of the trace system now on Apple and Android phones, people believe they can identify where a particular stolen phone is, and yet the police do not have the resources to help them recover. And they've argued, of course, that it's not precise enough, that tracking, but actually that tracking is actually quite precise. So we're in a difficult state, and it's not the police's fault. I'm not attributing fault to them. It's just that the pressures of modern life means there is so much crime out there. The judicial system, the system of taking stuff through the courts, is very demanding of officer time. I mean, if you've got time for another story, I can tell you one.
Go for it, David. It's fascinating talking to you, by the way.
I did some corporate fraud, and I got telephoned a few years ago from London by an investigative agency that I'd worked with before, and they said, can you help one of our staff who's coming down to Bristol, where I live near Bristol. So I met her off the train. We did an inquiry. It was a £1 million fraud at minimum. We identified the culprit. We identified where the culprit lived. We identified the cafe that the culprit habituated in London, actually. We found out who his friends were. All of this we did most of it by electronic means, which I did, Facebook and so on. And we took it then. I took it to a chief inspector in Avon and Somerset. I had it tied up with ribbon, really. This is an investigation. Yeah. And he says to me, well, David, knowing what you did before, you know what resources this is going to take. What's it going to take? So I said, well, it's going to take 3 to 4 officers to put it together, make the arrests, do the charging, and put it together, take 3 weeks at least. And I said, it's going to need 2 officers to mind it for probably 12 months till it comes to trial. And there's another story, because it takes so long for things to come to trial.
Of course.
And he said, well, the reason you're doing investigations like this, £1 million frauds, is because we can't. He said, I've got 9 murders in the back room.
That's astonishing. You had, as you say, tied up in a ribbon. David, final question.
Some statements taken. So
yeah.
It's difficult. It's difficult, and I don't blame the chief inspector who spoke to me. Obviously, what he was saying was true. It is a huge resource problem. We can't solve it by enforcement. We've got to target hard, and we've got to make people more resistant, more aware. And that's why I agreed to speak on your program, because I think that you're doing just speaking about it is part of doing that.
Well, David, thank you. Really interesting to speak to you today. I've learned an awful lot, and I appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Jane says, this is why so many want to keep cash. Many don't want to online banking. Banks forced many to do this. Many high streets have no banks at all. Chris in Brighton says, regarding fraud, our stupid government is switching off landlines, forcing the entire population and businesses to use highly hackable digital technology rather than reliable and safe analogue technology. It's total madness, says Chris in Brighton. We have covered that story before, certainly, but thanks for bringing it up again, Chris. I appreciate that. Let's do some voice notes. Kevin is in Sheffield and has some thoughts on Kemi Badenoch's comments. She has said that Reform UK is Corbynism with a Union Jack.
Morning, Peter. Kevin in Sheffield. Regarding Kemi Badenoch's comments this morning, I just can't stop laughing. Reform UK seem to come out with what I would call just ordinary common sense policies that ring with ordinary people, voters, etc. And all of a sudden, the legacy parties have lost their minds. We've had decades and decades of red politics, blue politics, and it's all been ridiculous, and it's still ended up where we're trillions and trillions of pounds in debt. So I'm sorry, if they think we're going to trust anything that either of them say again, think again. They just... I reckon they're just above water, but their feet are paddling like mad. Looking forward to the show. Carry on the good work, Peter.
Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate your comments. Lots in that. Nick is in Loughborough and wants to talk about Reform UK.
Good morning, Peter. It's Nick Moore from Loughborough. Isn't it amazing how we have a party with 5 MPs causing so much stir amongst the 2 major parties it's almost as if they're in government and the other two parties are fighting against them. I think it's astonishing. They are absolutely terrified of Nigel Farage, and with good reason, because he's going to win the next election. Have a good day, Peter.
Very interesting, Nick. Thank you so much for that. Mark in Lincolnshire has talked about what he thinks the electorate wants.
Morning, Peter. Great show as ever. Mark in Lincolnshire. My take on the current political discourse with Reform, Labour and the Tories. I mean, basically, when I've been on air before, I get a lot of Reform people that are thinking, oh, he's a UKIP fantasist. Nigel's going to save us. I hear that quite a lot as well. Nigel's going to save us. And Peter, the thing that really concerns me above anything else is there's nothing more dangerous politically than a desperate electorate, because they'll believe any old claptrap to be saved. Yeah, and the issue is, I just do not think he's going to do it. I think he's a snake. He chops and changes his mind too much. They're essentially going down the path of Boris Johnson again. And look how that worked out. Cheers, mate.
Mark, thanks for your thoughts. I know you're a sceptic of what Nigel Farage does, and you don't think he's right-wing enough as well. Pete in Lincolnshire says, maybe if the police stopped looking at non-hate crimes, they would have time to look at criminality. And Stephen Bromsgrove says, one idea I read of recently is to create a family password that only people you know have. Use that word in the first line of any message, then you can trust the message. Simple but good idea, says Steve in Bromsgrove. I think mine should be avocado. I will consult other members of my family, although we actually had a family WhatsApp group and my brother left. Yeah, that is a true story. Lots to discuss in the next hour. We'll talk about Kemi Badenoch, of course. We'll also give you an update in just a second about what Leicestershire police have said or not said to us about the ethnicity of that suspect. Stay with us.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. Yeah. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very very good afternoon. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company here on Talk. Lots to discuss. We're still trying to get an answer out of Leicestershire Police about why the 31-year-old man who's been arrested in regard to a road traffic incident, how we've been told he's a man, we've been told he's 31. What we haven't been told is what his ethnicity is. We know that 4 people currently remain in hospital. We're going to keep asking until 1 o'clock and indeed beyond. If Leicestershire Police tell us the answer, I'll let you know. Lots to discuss on America as well. Elon Musk took ketamine almost daily during the Trump campaign. That's the allegation from the New York Times. He says it's nonsense. The US is also to double tariffs on steel and aluminium, or aluminum as they would call it, to 50%, according to Trump. There was a slightly bizarre press conference yesterday in the Oval Office. We'll take a look back at that this hour as well. Is this the end of Doge in America? Trump says no as well, and he says that that Elon Musk was an incredibly helpful person. So we will look back at that, talk about that. We'll also get the travel as well, especially in regard to Tenerife Airport, which is apparently inhumane conditions are happening there. Why is that? We'll find out in just a second. Lots to discuss in terms of fraud, and also Kemi Badenoch, a rather extraordinary clip from her. We'll play it again in a second, where she says that Reform UK is Corbynism with a Union Jack. Do you think she's right? Let me know your thoughts on all of these matters. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. You can follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note 0344 499 1000. Same number for WhatsApp text messages, and of course to give me a ring 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss here on Talk. And tomorrow, Robert Jenrick, the Conservative of the moment, will be with us on my show tomorrow between 10 and 1. Sarah Pochin as well. We'll talk to her. We're hoping to talk to the Defence Secretary. That's just not confirmed just yet. But John Healy is in our sights, and we're hopefully going to have him on the show. He is, of course, talking about the Strategic Defence Review. That's out on Monday. But the big political story today is actually from an interview, which we're going to play you a little bit of now, actually, which is from Times Radio, our stablemate. We're owned by the same company. And Rod Liddle, you probably know Rod Liddle, he's a veteran journalist who's interviewed by Mike Graham and other people. I've had him on my shows as well. And Rod Liddle has interviewed Kemi Badenoch. This is part of what she has said.
There's only one policy, really, that Reform has that could be talked about as right-wing, and that is on immigration, which we talk about every single week. We have policies on immigration, they don't. I think the last thing they said they were going to announce on immigration was a minister for deportations. We already have 2 ministers for deportations, the immigration minister and the Home Secretary. It's just not serious. This isn't centre-right politics. It's Corbynism with a Union Jack. It's nationalisation. It's lifting the cap off to child benefit. These are Jeremy Corbyn's policies with Nigel Farage fronting them. And this is the thing that a lot of the people who keep talking about unite the right don't understand. This is not a right-wing party in the sense that I understand it. It is a party that wants to tell people that they can have whatever they like, and if they can't have it, it's because of those bad guys over there.
That's Kemi Badenoch there. What do you make of what she has said there? She says Reform UK has no policy on immigration. I think we're pretty clear they do. It's a curious statement to make. She's also said that Corbynism with a Union Jack is what Reform UK is. Reform UK have certainly had a few more traditionally left-wing policies. For example, lifting the 2-child benefit cap. That's something Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage agree with. Do you agree with Nigel Farage? Do you think that's the right thing? Do you agree with Kemi Badenoch? Do you think she's talking nonsense? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss here on Talk, and making a rare visit to the UK is Simon Calder, who joins me now. Simon, British tourists are in really, really bad conditions in Tenerife Airport at the moment. Just tell us about this story.
OK, well, let me tell you the situation. After Brexit, democratic vote to leave the European Union, I think it's been mentioned once or twice on Talk, we decided we wanted to be third country nationals. That means that we obviously don't get the fast track queues, and we demanded our right to have our passports scrutinised and stamped. Now, on a kind of routine Monday morning flight from Birmingham to Frankfurt or something, that's fairly straightforward. during half-term week going to and from the Canaries, it's far from straightforward. So we have seen in the past couple of days huge crowds of people waiting to get in to Tenerife at the island's southern airport. And the deal there is that, well, basically, I checked last night, there were 9 arrivals from various UK airports in just half an hour. That's 1,500 people, Peter, who are going to be wanting to be processed, and that takes time. Yes, I think at Tenerife Airport they do have some e-gates which are specifically for the Brits, but that all that does is basically look at your passport and say, oh, this is a valid passport belonging to Cardwell P, and here's a picture of him. Does he look like that? Oh yeah, picture doesn't actually do him justice.
He's a bit fatter these days.
And so then it lets you through, but of course only as far as an actual live official who has to scrutinise your passport, check that you haven't spent more than 90 days in the last 180 days in the EU, and then stamp the thing. Now, that takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, and the accusation is that the Spanish authorities have not been putting in the basic manpower to do that, as a result of which people are just enduring terrible times. And also they're being held on planes. A couple of nights ago, some captains were told, oi, don't let your lot off the plane yet, because we simply can't accommodate them in the immigration hall. And that, of course, makes things worse for the people going home who have to sit around for an extra hour or whatever, in increasingly crowded circumstances because everybody's piling into the airport. So it's a real mess, and I'd like to say things can only get better. You have previously on Talk talked about Keir Starmer saying, I'm delighted to say that the EU has said we can use the e-gates. I'm not sure which planet he is on, but it's not the same one as me, because what the EU doesn't have any rights here. It can say, here's the rules, here's we've got to check from Peter's passport, but how you do it, how you arrange it, whether you have e-gates is entirely up to independent EU countries. So he can't do that. And furthermore, I think ministers are kind of looking a bit further down the road towards the entry-exit system, this marvellous centralised database the EU has been promising for years. When finally that is up and running, and it might start in October and it might finish by this time next year, then there's a possibility we might be able to whiz through using the e-gates. That's still not up in the air, but that's going to be something for next summer, not this summer.
So even this summer, would you expect similar scenes? And I mean, some of the descriptions that we're talking about, inhumane conditions, parents having to lift their children in the air to stop them suffocating in the crowd, 500 holidaymakers facing a hellish start. I mean, this is, a load of people will go to Tenerife, very, very popular tourism destination. Is Spain the #1 holiday destination for Brits? Is that right?
Yes, by a long, long way ahead of France.
So that's only over half-term weekend, or half-term week, which is now ending. In the summer, you're saying things could get even worse?
Well, if you keep the same level of resources, then they would certainly get worse, because you get even more pressure from kind of third week in July onwards, when the English and the Welsh schools go on holiday. Of course, for Scotland, it's the end of June. But there are going to be crises.
Northern Ireland too, end of June, yeah.
Forgive me, you're quite right. Thank you very much. Yes, my apologies there. So for that assumes that things will stay the same, but of course they won't. There are crisis talks, because everybody from the airlines, UK airlines, who really don't want their passengers to suffer and really don't want to keep their planes on the ground for an extra hour, thank you very much, they will be putting pressure on. So will the Canary Islands tourist authorities, who just want people to get there, have a lovely time, and they want extra resources. Now, they can, I'm sure, kind of shuffle those around, but if you look at the Spanish holiday airports, staffing them for absolute peak time means that you would, the rest of the time, have an awful lot of officers sitting around drinking coffee. Very nice for them, very expensive for the country. So it's going to be tricky. Meanwhile, huge problems also across in Portugal, where I've just been told about serious queues arriving at Porto Airport in the north of the country. And yesterday, people missing flights because they simply couldn't get through passport control to get out of Portugal, because of course we also said we want to have our passports stamped on the way out, please. So very, very messy, very expensive. A family I spoke to, 5 of them, they ran up to the gate after queuing for 2 hours for passport control to be told, sorry, the plane's just leaving. They spent £1,600 on new flights.
Oh, goodness
miserable
me.
situation, yes.
So what's your advice then to people? Is it going to, you're talking about Spain and Portugal, is there anywhere else, or would you give a sort of universal advice to people who are going abroad in the next few days?
Okay, yeah, if you are flying to the EU, it's probably going to be okay. If you go somewhere like Rome, they've got special gates for kind of more favoured third country nationals. That's the Brits, Canadians, Americans, Australians, New Zealanders, and so on. And you will get your passport. You will go through the e-gates there, and then there's an officer sitting there, and he or she simply stamps your passport. That's quite fast. But at the other extreme, just up the road in Milan Malpensa, if your plane lands immediately after the flight from Dubai on Emirates, over 500 people coming in, you are going to be there for an hour or more. It's just the way that things go. We wanted to be outside. We are outside. This is the result of that. All you can do is hope for the best. But it's actually worse when you're coming out of a country and you are trying obviously to catch your flight, suddenly to find you're waiting for 2 hours and you miss the flight. That gets very stressful and very expensive, and I think that's where attention really needs to be. Faro Airport, I'm getting some pretty awful stories, and of course gateway for the beautiful Portuguese Algarve, absolute favourite of ours.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. That's Simon Calder there, the travel correspondent of The Independent. Lots to think about there. Maybe you're just back from Tenerife yourself. Did you have a nightmare in the Canaries? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Simon has some very, very good advice there. I'm actually going for a bit of a break myself in the next few days, and I will absolutely take it. I'm here tomorrow, as I say, between 10 and 1, and then I'm off for about 10 days, and I'm going away for a few days as well. But Jack will be well looked after. Every time I say I'm going away, everyone says, "Hi, what about Jack? Who's looking after Jack, my cat?" I will say that his auntie Annika, whose birthday it is this very day, and a very happy birthday to Annika, will be looking after Jack, so fear not. We will talk to Malcolm Rifkind in just a second. Sir Malcolm is of course the former Defence Secretary, about this defence deal, the strategic defence deal. Is there enough money coming into defence? Are you happy with the fact that it's 3% of what the country makes, and of course some of that money has to come from elsewhere, and Rachel Reeves making very tough financial decisions in the next 11 days. That's when I'm coming back. Actually, I'll be back on air on the 11th for the spending review, and I'll be talking through all of that with Julie Hartley-Brewer and Ian Collins and Jeremy Kyle. So lots that Rachel Reeves has to do between now and then. Let me just read out a couple of messages just before the break, including Simon and Devon, who says the only policy the Tories have got is the hope the British people forget the last 14 years. Spoiler alert, absolutely no chance. Reform all the way for Simon. And John in Norwich says the simplest solution to online scams: ignore and delete everything. Scroll past online ads without a second thought and never answer a phone call unless you recognise the caller. Problem solved. Well, please answer the phone if it comes from us. I don't know what comes up on your phone when we ring you from our... It's a withheld number, I'm told, comes up if we are ringing you back, if you have rung us. If you want to ring us now and get your voice on the air between now and 1 o'clock, loads to discuss today, of course. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Don't you realise how you've embarrassed us? Trump is evil.
They were saying that, yeah.
Yes, they were saying that. Well, Elon was saying that, and he's evil, and you know, you're also evil to
support him. How has it gone so much full circle? What's his journey since then?
They experienced the Biden presidency, and when they experienced the Biden presidency, they realized that this group of people were out to destroy everything of value in the United States, including their own businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Sir Malcolm Rifkind is the former Defence Secretary. He joins me now because the Strategic Defence Review is due on Monday. We're getting some of the detail already, and the Ministry of Defence documents are expected to highlight the dangers posed by Russia and China. We also know, and it's been confirmed to the Times newspaper this morning, that John Healey, the current Defence Secretary, has said in the next Parliament this country will spend 3% of our GDP, what the country makes, on defence. Sir Malcolm, thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you, but happy to be with you.
Thank you. It's, of course, the afternoon. I've just realised that. Apologies.
It happens most days.
It does indeed. You're absolutely correct. Generally around 12 o'clock, I find. Tell me, is 3% good enough?
Well, 3% is a very big increase compared to where we are at the moment. But I have to make 2 points. This is not just the outcome of the review. The review has been undertaken by George Robertson, former NATO Secretary General, on behalf of the Labour government. It started its work quite some time ago. And of course, what's overtaken it is the Trump presidency, because President Trump, as soon as he took over, made clear what we've often suspected, that his commitment to NATO is far weaker than any of his predecessors, and that if Europe wanted to protect itself against potential Russian aggression, European countries had to increase their defense expenditure. Now, that was a view many of us had held for quite some time. But of course, with the American president potentially serious about withdrawing American support, that has transformed the political debate, and that's why we have the likely increase that is being speculated on at the moment.
How serious is the American and Trump aspect of this, do you think? Do you think, in theory, America could withdraw from NATO? Could it be as serious as that, Sir Malcolm, or is that pie in the sky?
No, I don't think it's going to withdraw from NATO. In fact, it would be absurd for an American president to do so, particularly this one, because his whole theme in his political world is MAGA, Make America Great Again. Now, what is it that makes America great? Well, lots of things, but the single most important from the military point of view is the NATO alliance, because if NATO is ever in combat because of a threat from Russia or elsewhere, and then the commander-in-chief of NATO is always the president of the United States. So it would be self-defeating for the president to, as it were, cut off his own potential credibility in this way. I think actually Trump unintentionally has done us a favor for this reason. It's been necessary for some years, not just for Britain, but for France, for Germany, for virtually all European countries, to substantially increase their defence expenditure. It was cut down far, far too far over the years that we've just been through. Now, you can announce an increase in defence expenditure. That doesn't mean you automatically have more military capability at your disposal. It takes 2 to 3 years to translate a commitment with the finance to recruit the additional military personnel, to build the aircraft, the ships, the artillery, the ammunition, to actually get the defense industries that manufacture these goods to build up their capacity. So that actually works quite well. 2 or 3 years from now is perhaps the earliest date that we would face a serious threat from Putin, from Russia, if the Ukraine war was over and he wanted to start aggression elsewhere.
In terms of what is said here and proposed, we're looking at a change between now and 2034. Is that a reasonable time frame? And actually, what John Healey is saying is he's making a commitment, as sometimes is inevitable within government, but certainly 2034 Labour may not be in government. A new party in government perhaps may disagree with that objective.
Look, you've got two constraining issues. You're wanting to get across credibility that you are genuinely increasing defence expenditure, which I think the government is committed to. I don't actually doubt that. It would have been true whoever was the government at this moment in time. But you've also got to reconcile what your commitments are to the realities of your financial and economic situation and what you can get through the Treasury and what the country can afford. And so what you've got is 1934 is, in its sense, it's an artificial date. Actually, we need these increases, not in 9 years' time, but we need them to come into effect probably a maximum of 4 or 5 years from now. And that may be what the Prime Minister and his colleagues privately assumed to be the case. But they've got to be able to have a credible explanation as to where the money is going to come from. And that is true not just of Britain, but of France, of Germany, and of other countries. There's a lot of work being done at the moment because you can find alternative ways of financing defence expenditure, for example, by creating some multi-government fund covering many countries, and the NATO countries, for example, and then the governments make a modest contribution, and against that contribution you can leverage, you can borrow on the markets very much larger sums without having to accommodate their costs at this moment in time. Sounds a bit complex, but in reality that's the kind of work that's being done at the moment to ensure this does not mean cuts in health or education or housing or other crucial social policies.
Russia is clearly the #1 threat, but it's interesting some of the language that has been used and is in the Times newspaper today and other newspapers too in regard to China. I just wonder how you assess our relationship as a country with China at the moment, Sir Malcolm.
Well, the concerns about threats from China, particularly that they might invade Taiwan and create a war in that particular part of the world, these are serious considerations. And they're not irrelevant to the United Kingdom or Europe, but we're not a Pacific power. We are at the other end of the world. So, yes, we would give solidarity to Taiwan, to the United States, because remember, from America's point of view, what happens in China or off the China coast is hugely important to their own national security in a way that does not apply to Europe. America came into the Second World War not because of Adolf Hitler or matters in Europe, but because Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and almost destroyed the American Pacific Navy. So we are an Atlantic country. But the United States is an Atlantic country, but it's also Pacific. It's got two oceans, one on either side. And therefore what happens in China's its, I don't want to exaggerate, but China's its nearest neighbor across the Pacific, apart from very small islands. So of course the Americans give that much greater priority. Being realistic, if there is a conflict between China and Taiwan and China and the United States, certainly I have no doubt the United Kingdom and other European countries will give strong diplomatic support, perhaps economic help, support sanctions, do a lot of things. At the military level, our contribution could only be symbolic. We don't have the armed forces, nor are likely to have, to be able to make a major military contribution in the Pacific at the same time as we face a potential threat from Putin's Russia.
Sir Malcolm Rifkind, former Defence Secretary, thank you very much for joining me on Talk today. I appreciate that. Jill in Cheshire has been in touch and says, good morning, Peter. I have lived, it's the afternoon, as Malcolm Rifkind has pointed out, although she did send this a little while ago, so it was the morning when Jill sent it. Hi, Peter. How about that? I have lived through decades of different political governments and have never seen one of them get it right 100% of the time. For me, a good leader will respond to the people's needs and concerns, and if it means U-turning with an admission that they may have to change something, then I respect that. To blindly go ahead with damaging and unpopular policies is, in my mind, unforgivable. All the best, says Jill in Cheshire. Alison from London has been in touch and says, regarding Kemi Badenoch's leadership of the Conservative Party, I haven't communicated with anybody in the last few weeks who thinks she has any sort of future. Even those who are willing to defend her don't think she will last past May next year. Today's bizarre statement makes her going sooner rather than later more inevitable, says Alison. Well, thank you to that, Alison. And another person says, it's all based on migration, Peter. We all know this, surely. We'd vote for anyone who can stop the flipping boats before we lose our country. And my goodness, it is heading that way fast. We are fighting for this. Richard in Northampton says, I'm not sure about scrapping the two-child benefit cap, but that in itself will not stop me voting Reform UK. Paul Richards, who was on a little bit earlier on, the former Labour advisor who was there, is clutching at straws, says Richard in Northampton. Prison as a holiday camp, it's a joke, says Debbie in Horley, reacting to the Axel Radicubana story. He, of course, has been given treats like Maltesers and sweets and things like that. But this is, I mean, just weeks after throwing boiling water over a prison officer. Why on earth has he got any privileges whatsoever? Tony says Jo Wheeler should stand as a candidate for Reform UK. She is marvellous, says Tony. I'm a big fan of Jo Wheeler, I must say. You know, she came on here. The reason I got to know Jo, actually, was because she sometimes presented the weather on this station when we had sort of in-vision weather presenters. And I was chatting to her loads of times, and I just thought, you know, Jo is a really talented broadcaster, and she has so many really interesting common sense opinions. And I just thought, why not just get her on? And there was a colleague, I'll not say who it was, who said, really, weather forecaster giving political commentary? Is this really a good idea? I said, look, trust me, it's going to work. The people will love her. And there we are. Tony is speaking for so many of us. Dawn says, hi Peter, great show as always. Funny how Labour and Conservatives keep talking about reform. They don't think to mention the Lib Dems or any other party. Do you think Reform are getting under their skins? Dawn, I absolutely do. Lib Dems, I mean, there are 72 of them. There are many, many more Lib Dem MPs. There are 67 more Lib Dem MPs than there are Reform UK MPs. We barely hear from them. I mean, Ed Davey talks about Trump all the time at Prime Minister's Questions. And makes all these sort of fatuous points that just are of no great interest. Although Trump has been making some very, very interesting points himself, actually, in regard to Elon Musk, and that we'll talk in just a second, actually, about that press conference that happened yesterday in the Oval Office. So stay with us for all of that. If you want to get your thoughts on the air between now and 1 o'clock, let me know them. 0344 499 1000. You can text me at 722 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. I'll have a look at my Twitter actually during the break, and I'll read out a few tweets in just a minute or two. And we will speak to Laurie Laird, the American political commentator, in regard to this press conference yesterday. It was just starting actually, just as I was finishing Talk Drive. We'll look back on that and what Elon Musk and Donald Trump have been saying. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Quite a lot of people getting in touch, including about Tenerife Airport. Sandy says, I lived in Tenerife 13 years ago. Tenerife South Airport has always been dreadful. It's always understaffed, and the staff there just stroll around. Gran Canaria and Corfu airports you can just sail through in minutes because there's an abundance of efficient staff. Nothing to do with Brexit or e-gates, says Sandy. And another person, Mad Catwoman 67, says we arrived at Gran Canaria Airport on Monday. The gates were taking about a minute for each person. Once through, the passport was stamped. It was very well organised and clearly not as busy as Tenerife. Sue Blake, who calls herself a very cross working taxpayer, has been in touch on messages as well and says, here's a novel idea. People on benefits who are fit should be made to work for their unemployment benefit. There are so many physical services that have been cut due to council shortfalls in their budget. It would make sense for the unemployed to do these jobs: picking up litter, tidying towns and villages, keeping up graveyards, painting public buildings. I could name a lot more. If they didn't complete the jobs, given satisfactorily reduce their money. To hell with the ECHR, we're too soft. It's time to say enough is enough, says Sue Blake. Another person's been in touch about Kemi Badenoch's comments. These comments illustrate exactly why Reform are surging forward with massive support. She demonstrates perfectly why both Conservatives and Labour are so out of touch with the nation, says this person. That's Kemi Badenoch, saying that Reform do not have an immigration policy, and also that Reform are simply Corbynism with a Union Jack. Karen has been in touch with a voice note. This is what Karen says.
Hi, Peter. Paul is very condescending to the people of this country, saying that we don't have sophisticated analysis of Corbyn's view. Oh, yes, we do. And we also have a very sophisticated analysis of what's going on in this country. And I'll tell you how we know, how we do that. We've got eyes and ears and we listen. And we've had enough of people jumping the queue, the boat's still coming, Sadiq Khan even trying to ruin London, pace of knots, and a leader of the Labour Party that hates Britain and its people, by the way, who are the backbone of this country. We have had enough. We, the workers, are going to vote Reform, and there is a huge dislike of Starmer. OK, not everybody in the country hates him, but a lot do.
Karen, thanks very much for your thoughts. Just to update you on Leicestershire Police. We have contacted them, we've spoken to them on the phone, we've emailed them. We're trying to get an answer out of them as to why a 31-year-old man from Leicester who has been arrested after 4 people were put in hospital, an investigation ongoing as to what happened with a road incident, man remaining in police custody, has been questioned by officers. We have asked them, given that what happened with Liverpool this week, where very quickly the information came out, 53-year-old white British man. We asked Leicestershire about this, Leicestershire Police, why we've got this as a 31-year-old man in this case that they have as a suspect that they are questioning at the moment. What they haven't told us is his ethnicity. Well, given that Merseyside Police did it, we thought perfectly reasonable to ask why Leicestershire Police didn't in their press release. We looked at the press release, no answer. We got in touch with him, and Finn, who's our producer today, he said he just rang them, and they said the press officer said they're not prepared to discuss any further on the phone. Made the point that Merseyside Police deal with the situations in their own way, and it's up to them to release that information. They will update us apparently via email or social media. They said they wouldn't discuss any further, and that was the end of the call. That's what Finn has told us. So they basically said, look, this is over, not going to get into this any further. Isn't that kind of weird? Isn't that something that shouldn't all police forces do the same thing when it comes to these incidents? This is not as serious an incident, of course, but of course it's very, very serious for the people involved. It's not quite what happened in Liverpool, but nonetheless, we're not told the ethnicity. Now, I don't care what the ethnicity of this person is. It doesn't matter to me what that ethnicity actually is, whether this person is whatever ethnicity they have. But shouldn't we be given that information in exactly the same way as we were earlier in the week? What's Leicestershire Police up to? Why are they not doing that? I don't understand that, and they won't give us a clear answer on that either. Different police officers, different police forces anyway, seem to have their own different policies on that. Shouldn't there be a united policy on it? And Sir Mark Rowley, the head of the Metropolitan Police this week, he said there should be more transparency in police services. Well, Leicestershire Police, I think we can safely say, are not being transparent in this case. Now, they have said that we asked people not to speculate about this incident, including on social media, in order to allow a thorough investigation to take place. I absolutely want that to happen. I want the full force of the law to take its course, for the investigation to go where it goes. But I'm also, I think quite reasonably, asking the question as to why there is not the same standard and the same information coming from Leicestershire Police than there was from Merseyside Police. I think that's quite a reasonable thing to ask, but we're not being told. Right then, let's talk about America, because Elon Musk has been in the White House. He's been in the Oval Office. Of course, he has been a fairly constant companion, really, frequent companion anyway, to Donald Trump. This is quite interesting. We're asking, many of the journalists who were there yesterday were asking, is this the end of Doge, the fact that Elon Musk is leaving? He is, although he will be back, apparently. This is what Donald Trump said in regard to this particular issue.
This is not the end of Doge, but really the beginning. My time as a special government employee necessarily had to end. It was a limited time thing. It's 134 days, I believe, which ends in a few days. The Doge team will only grow stronger over time. The Doge influence will only grow stronger. It's I'd liken it to sort of Buddhism. It's like a way of life. So it is permeating throughout the government, and I'm confident that over time we'll see $1 trillion of savings and a reduction in $1 trillion of waste and fraud reduction. And I'll continue to be visiting here and be a friend and advisor to the president, and I look forward to times being back in this amazing room. By the way, isn't this incredible? Look at this incredible. I mean, it's stunning. I think the way that the Oval Office, how the president has just completely redone the Oval Office is beautiful. That's it, really. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Great job.
So it was Elon Musk speaking there, obviously, other than Donald Trump. He had a very interesting T-shirt on there in the style of The Godfather. It said The Doge Father, which was in the same style, a very interesting T-shirt. Well, Laurie Laird is a US political commentator. We made her an offer she couldn't refuse to come on the programme. And Laurie, what do you make of the fact that Elon Musk is leaving?
Well, Peter, I'm just so glad, just an aside before we start, that you picked up the clip where Elon Musk complimented Donald Trump on his interior design. He was talking about how marvelous the Oval Office was, and you cut it out just before Elon Musk looked up and said, and look at the gold on the ceiling. And then Trump said, it's 24 karat gold. I mean, it was just wonderful, absolutely class act. So
tiny
I'm so
bit
glad
camp.
you got that.
Perhaps a tiny bit camp.
Well, particularly when you're talking about cutting government waste, right? But that is an aside.
Fair point.
I was interested to see how complimentary Trump was about Musk, because when this was coming to an end, and for a couple of days ago, Musk was on television saying he didn't agree with the deficit spending in the big beautiful bill. That's the spending bill, the budget bill that got through the House of Representatives. So Musk was a little bit down on Trump, and then when Trump was talking about Musk in social media posts, he simply said Musk is leaving. He didn't say how he's wonderful and doing a great job the way he does with his other acolytes. So it was interesting to see how complimentary he was of Musk in the Oval Office.
Yes, certainly. And let's see a little bit more of what Donald Trump himself said. He said Elon Musk not really leaving. It'll be very, very interesting to see what happens as time goes on. I'll ask you about that in a second. But let's have another look at what happened in the Oval Office yesterday. This is Donald Trump saying Americans owe Elon Musk for his service to the United States. This is what the president said.
Elon's really not leaving. He's going to be back and forth, I think. I have a feeling. It's his baby, and I think he's going to be doing a lot of things. But Elon's service to America has been without comparison in modern history. He's already running one of the most innovative car companies in the world. You look at his factories and compare them with some of the old factories we have, and it's a big difference. And the most successful space company, and I guess in history you would have to say the largest free speech platform on the internet, etc. Americans owe him a great debt of gratitude. So I just want to thank Elon for his time as a special government employee. Can you imagine? They called him an employee, but it's a special government employee, and for coming and helping us. And he really has changed the mindset of a lot of people. A lot of people thought, maybe we'll cut 1% or 2% or 3%. Then they said, wow, we can cut a lot more than that. And we're going to do it very surgically. We're going to continue on the march. We're making America great again.
The President Donald Trump talking about Elon Musk there. It's interesting because it's all smiles at the moment and it's all great handshakes and fancy keys to the White House and all the rest of it, Laurie. But there actually have been a number of occasions, including in the last few days actually, where Elon Musk has been critical of Donald Trump. So it hasn't always been just sunshine, lollipops and rainbows, has it?
Well, in some ways, these guys are diametrically opposed to each other. Musk is not a guy who likes tariffs. In fact, tariffs are detrimental to his business. He's not a guy who has come out in favor of capping immigrant labor. In fact, he at one point was immigrant labor. So in some of these key policy areas for Trump, the two men don't agree. And let's be honest, they're two really big egos here. These men are like two cats in a bag. But there's something, Peter, that I think that will keep them linked for the foreseeable future. And that's money. And that's Musk's willingness. He has to put money into political campaigns. Now, he put a lot of money into a judicial race for the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. His preferred candidate didn't win. Musk then said, I may not put so much money into elections. I'm not sure that I fully believe that. And it's not been that long that Trump has said, look, any Republican who doesn't vote for my budget bill could face a primary challenge. And I think he's thinking Musk will fund that. So Trump needs the kind of money that Elon Musk has shown that he's willing to put into political races, simply to cut off any competition in the Republican Party, to take, sort of cut out any moderate Republicans who may query Trump.
Yeah, and there's just one more clip actually that I want to show here. This is interesting because there've been all sorts of questions, and I don't want to get too into the weeds of this, but about which journalists were allowed in or not allowed in, and the different pooling system in the White House. I don't think that means a lot to too many people, but what we do know, of course, is that there've been very serious allegations made about Elon Musk and alleged drug use by a big report in the New York Times. This is Elon Musk refusing to answer questions from that newspaper. Let's have a look at this.
The president mentioned that you had to deal with all the slings and arrows during your time at Doge. There's this.
Well, some of the people, some of the media organizations in this room were the slingers.
Well, so there is a New York Times report today that accuses you of blurring the line between.
Is the New York Times, is that the same publication that got a Pulitzer Prize for false reporting on the Russiagate? Is it the same organization?
I got to check my Pulitzer counter.
It is. I think the judge just ruled against the New York Times for their lies about the Russiagate hoax, and that they might have to give back that Pulitzer Prize. That New York Times. Let's move on.
Okay. Then
next question.
Should say I'm not sure that reporter is actually from the New York Times, but they're discussing the New York Times anyway, and certainly these allegations have been made. He denies them, Laurie. What do you make of this?
Peter, I've been back and forth on this one, and I think that Elon Musk did have, in theory, what was quite a big job as head of Doge. In practice, it really wasn't that big. The amount of money that he said that he could save was always, absolutely fantastic, because Trump has promised not to touch Social Security, not to touch Medicare, which is health care for the elderly. So Doge was never going to be as effective as Build. But as for what he does in his private life, I don't know. I'm not incensed about this. I think there are other things about Elon Musk.
I agree with you, but I suppose if the allegations are true and he was, on drugs while making very serious decisions,
absolutely
in government, that's a serious issue.
And we have seen some decisions that I think many people think, well, gosh, that seems a bit erratic. Things like getting rid of many, many people at the Department of Energy, including people who had specialized skill in guarding nuclear stockpile. That seems a little bit hasty to me. There have been some decisions that Doge has made under the leadership of Elon Musk that I think many people would query.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I just wonder where you think this relationship goes from here.
I think money. I think that Donald Trump will continue to count on Musk to fund Republican races, to get Trump-favored candidates into office, at least through the midterm cycle. I think the big question becomes, and I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself here, when does Trump become a lame duck, right? Since the beginning of history, when you see a president get toward the end of their presidential career, they tend to become less effective. They tend to look at their legacy. They tend to become less partisan. We're not seeing any indication that Trump thinks that way. We know that he's going to gear up for the midterms, and I think that we could see a lot of Musk funding for favored Trump candidates when we get toward those midterms in 18 months' time.
Yes, perhaps you might say to the Doge father, it's not personal, it's strictly business. Thank you very much indeed. 3 Godfather quotes in there. Thank you very much indeed to Laurie Laird, the US political commentator. And thank you to you as well for getting in touch. Alan in Ainsdale says, hi Peter, how dare Richard Hermer compare Reform UK voters to Nazis? Typical attitude of the left. Do you think Labour will go scorched earth and wreck the country as much as they can before the next election, knowing they won't win? Alan, it's sort of worse than that. I mean, people say, you know, Starmer doesn't care about Britain and so on. I can absolutely see where people are coming from on that. The reason I disagree is not because I think Keir Starmer loves Britain, but because he thinks he's doing the right thing. And that's kind of almost worse than actually having a scorched earth policy. Lots more to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. We're also going to talk to Peter Blexley about Leicestershire Police. Why won't just tell us what Merseyside Police did as well? We'll discuss with Peter in a second. Stay with us.
Don't you realise how you embarrassed us? Trump is evil.
They were saying that, yeah.
Yes, they were saying that. And well, Elon was saying that, and he's evil, and you know, you're also evil to
support him. How has it gone so much full circle?
Well, you know,
what's his journey
they
since then?
experienced the Biden presidency, and when they experienced the Biden presidency, they realised that this group of people were out to destroy everything of value in the United States, including their own businesses.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Gary's been in touch and says to implement the big policies Nigel Farage has, like scrapping net zero, drill baby drill, leaving the ECHR, stopping the boats and targeting net zero immigration, he will first have to get into government. Now the reality is that unless Farage widens his appeal to more voters on the centre ground and slightly left of centre, that's probably not going to happen, says Gary. Lifting the 2-child benefit cap is a relatively small cost in the big scheme of things, but it will be popular among some of those voters who have not yet swung in behind reform yet, whilst I doubt it will cost any votes among the people who have expressed an intention to vote for reform at the next election, because even if they don't approve the policy, it is, as I say, such a small issue in the scheme of things, says Gary. Interesting stuff, Gary, although just quite a few people quite annoyed by this, but no one so far anyway that I've spoken to in the last few days saying they're now not going to vote reform, who was previously going to vote reform. Of course, not everybody who watches and listens to this station votes for any one party. Some people vote for no party, some people vote loads of different parties. Sean in Bridlington says Badenoch has lost the room now. Any hopes of winning back voters from reform are dead and buried for her after calling reform Corbynism with a union flag, says Sean in Bridlington. Thank you to the person who says I went through the e-gates at Tenerife South in February. There was only one immigration officer in a booth after the gates, and he didn't even inspect my passport. He just stamped it with a date. Quite frankly, I think that these countries are quite relaxed about the 90 and 180 day rules. So over 180 days you can only be in the EU, but by 90 days they enforce it in the same way as they do customs laws. You should know the rules, so stick to them, and if you get caught breaking them, you'll know the consequences. Excuse me. Barry says, afternoon Peter, Britain should sign a military agreement with the USA and look to its own defence of the British Isles, never mind sending military assets to defend the EU border. This country has done its bit defending Europe. The countless military cemeteries are testament to that, and they are not one bit grateful, says Barry. I want to talk now about something we didn't really expect to happen. There was breaking news, of course, earlier. This is a 31-year-old man from Leicester who has been arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent and causing serious injury by dangerous driving following a collision in Leicester. 2 men and a woman have been injured following the incident in the early hours of this morning. 3 of those hurt are in hospital with serious injuries. So this is a car-related incident. This is the people in hospital as a result. It's not on the same scale as Liverpool, and we're going to be really, really careful what we say about Liverpool because charges have been brought there. But what is a fact and is straightforward is that the ethnicity of the suspect, the person who has been charged, was made public on Monday. We were told it was a 53-year-old white British man. That information was released by Merseyside Police. Now, Leicestershire Police, a different force, have told us in this press release that a 31-year-old man from Leicester has been arrested in this incident last night. What they're not telling us is his ethnicity. We've asked them, what's his ethnicity? We don't care what it is. It doesn't matter what his ethnicity is, but they just won't give us that information. We've spoken to them, we've emailed them, we've had 2 different producers here having a chat with them. They won't give us that information. Why not? Shouldn't there be a universal policy? Well, Peter Blexley is a former Metropolitan Police detective. Peter, what's going on here, do you think?
Inconsistent policing, unfortunately. We all remember the dreadful riots of last year. Well, His Majesty's Inspectorate did a full investigation into the background of the riots, the Southport slaughter, all of that. And they published 2 reports, and they said the police thereafter need to get information promptly, as quickly as they can, out into the public domain to stop speculation, gossip, rumour, scandal, that kind of thing. And credit to Merseyside Police because they got that information that you just mentioned very swiftly into the public domain. And of course, somebody's been charged and all that information appeared to be correct. Leicestershire Police here are dragging their heels. They no doubt will have the excuse finder general scratching their head and coming up with reasons as to why they haven't done it. But let's remember, Leicestershire is a county, Leicester is a city that has been blighted by interfaith disturbances and interracial disturbances. My speculation would be they don't want to make the situation worse, hence they're holding information back.
And they may not want to make the situation worse, and I totally get that and I understand that. But as you correctly say, Peter, they should just tell us because it is a very straightforward piece of information. Merseyside Police have said it, and Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, has said police forces need to be more transparent. So I don't really know what they can hide behind here. I don't really, they've told us we're not going to tell you, but they haven't given us a reason for that. And that will lead, ironically, to more speculation. We're just asking the question, which is, I think, perfectly legitimate journalistic inquiry. Others may disagree, but I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, hold on a second, you've got the Met Police Commissioner saying there should be transparency. You've got a report from the inspectorate, the police inspectorate, saying they should be transparent. You've got one major police force with a major incident being transparent and putting that information in the public domain. You're a smaller police force. Am I missing something here, Peter? Am I being unreasonable?
I am in complete agreement with you. You speak absolute sense. This is inconsistent, therefore it is unacceptable. And quite possibly what might be happening now on the ground will, in this void, in this vacuum of information, will that vacuum currently be being filled with gossip, scandal, rumour, incorrect information? All of that might be possible. Hence, it is very important that they let us know, and they let us know now.
Peter, thank you for your thoughts. That's Peter Blexley, former Metropolitan Police detective. Appreciate you coming on at short notice as well, Peter, because this story has just emerged today, of course. Marilyn is in London, and Marilyn, just a couple of minutes before the end of the programme, to tell me about a fraud that happened to you. I know fraud is a big issue. It's something that's getting bigger. Tell us your thoughts on this.
Oh, hi, Peter. It's not actually a fraud. I had somebody phone up saying they're from Notting Hill Police Station. They had somebody who said it's my nephew with my husband's name and whatever. And I said, no, it's definitely not. They said, no, we didn't believe that. This is serious fraud. And I said, well, before I answer any more questions, how do I know who you are? He said, absolutely. He gave me all his information, his number, his name, and everything. And he said, phone 999 up, give them my details, and then
That's a good way to do it, isn't it, Marilyn? That's a clever thing. Give me your number. How do I get back to you? Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so what I did was I actually used my brain and I used my mobile number rather than my landline. Phoned through to 999. They confirmed absolutely wasn't right. You know, he was not a piece with a number. And so okay, well, she's fine. I wasn't hurt or anything. They said, but just a minute. They came back and they said, well, no, this is a serious crime now because somebody's tried to impersonate a police officer.
Ah, okay.
Right, fine, not a problem. They're sending somebody round to see me. I said, really? They made an appointment. Somebody came to my house, very nice police officer, who turned up. I could give him no more information than I'd given the police. Mm-hmm. He said, fine. And I said, what can you do about it? He said, nothing. I said, well, without being rude, why?
What was the point? Yeah. Why have you bothered?
He said, well, we like to follow these things up. Well, fair enough. I wasn't hurt. Nobody else can get a police officer when they want. Mm-hmm. And I've waited. It was a very nice police officer, but why come round and chase something up they could do nothing about? Whereas other people get done and they can chase it up and find it. So anyway, that's all. I'm just saying I'm very annoyed they wasted the police officer
and wasted your time as well, Marilyn, let's face it.
No, I wasn't worried about that. I was more concerned about wasting a police officer's time. And who could have been investigating something else, that was all.
Marilyn, thanks for letting us know that. I really appreciate that call, Marilyn, there, telling us about